Hey everybody, hope you're doing all right. Hey to you out there in here, if you're here. We're going to do the Reverie Roundtable in just a second. And as always, that's literally all I have to say on the matter. That's it. As all for time. Everything. Really nothing else for me to add. Conversation. Making noises that seem like content, but in the end, truly, are nothing but the ravings of an individual who very poor at distracting around. Hello, all.
Good evening.
Yeah, what's up? What's good?
Sup.
So, topic number one, your creative writings, Prime.
Yeah.
Those articles he writes for Pornhub.
Hey, I was trying to keep it PG. Creative writings.
I've thought about it because I've told you guys before that I've been very honest that I really like erotic fiction, and I've written other stuff, and so I want to, I've considered putting a few things out there,
and it actually makes, based off of our conversation we had a few weeks ago, it totally makes sense now why people would appreciate erotic writings where it's like a foreign concept for me. I'm just seeing words on a page.
Yeah, how do you? I mean, I'm not sure how much of you've even read, but I guess you've countered some of that.
Totally.
How does it make you feel? I mean, you understand that it's risque or whatever what you're reading, and
yeah, but I'm like, if of the few times that I've pried open like a Harlequin romance novel, it's like, yeah, I don't get any sort of vivid imagery or anything like that. It's just like, whatever. Obviously, I can picture individual things, that they're describing, but to piece it together in some sort of fantasy, like that just doesn't happen for me.
Interesting. All right, it's fair. It's fair.
Deficiencies in my brain.
And does anyone else like it? This is a great topic to start off with now. Does anyone else written erotic porn?
I mean, I'll dabble in a little erotic fiction every night once in a while. Like if I'm on a plane, like at the bookstore, I'm like, oh, I can't find nothing. Let me go buy a 1 hour thirst read.
What up, fellas?
Hey. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, let's Echo. He's got a lot of
It's all erotic fiction in his background.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah. Echo, do you like erotic fiction? I don't think he's working on his.
We're talking about lady porn?
No, not just lady porn. No, just for men.
No, the porn that ladies.
It's not lady porn.
The porn that ladies read on the train.
Oh my god, no! It doesn't have to be lady porn. I'm just saying,
I have a running theory that the majority of just readers that read for fun, it's gonna be women and gay guys, and then the minority of straight men read for enjoyability and fun. And studies seem to agree
Whoa! No! Well, okay, I post those studies, but just on average, women tend to, at least of the limited data that are available, just on average, women read more than men.
Yep.
At least recreationally.
Yeah, and then then my argument is, of the percentage of men that read, I'd assume it's more gay than straight. I don't think straight guys are reading. They're not too. They're not too.
Yeah, straight guys are not reading. Period.
That's
they're reading tweets and shit. I mean, reading for fun, going and getting books and reading books.
Yeah. We clearly hate reading.
I didn't say all. I didn't say all. I don't think men are a monolith.
I think Ali's probably right based off of just my intuition, but I think it's again one of those causation versus correlation examples, right? Like palm trees don't make people in a county age, but there's a strong correlation between how many palm trees are in a county and the average age of people living in a county. And it's why? Well, because elderly people like to live near beaches and they like to live in warmer places. Oh, and it just so happens that the older you get, the more money you have, so the more likely you're able to afford to live in those nicer places, right? So it's I think, Ali, you might be right, but that might just be because men tend to prefer different forms of media.
Yeah, I'm just
and like there's
accidentally
like
right.
a narrative, right? It's like, well, like there's a narrative told by most statistics, right? Like I do this all the time where I talk about like crime statistics in the blacks, right? It's like there's a narrative told by like the classic 1350 meme, but like there's also a narrative told by the fact that like blacks make up 27% of police interactions. So it's like, oh, is that over policing within the community because it's twice the amount of police interactions? And then like they make up 26% of like fatal shootings while unarmed, right? Which makes them ever like not statistically significant in any way, shape, or form than whites in terms of whether or not they're shot by police when they're unarmed for that. But then like you look at like incarceration rates and it's like, oh, they're like fucking 60% of incarceration. And even when you control for other variables, there's still like this unknown reason that blacks end up serving jail time, even when you account for like socioeconomic status, et cetera. But like none of those things are actually like, none of those things are anything other than just a correlation, right? They don't, it doesn't mean anything. It's just, it has a story in and of itself because you react to that data because whatever heuristic you have for viewing the world, that data like tells you something about the world, even if it isn't necessarily a truth.
I don't know that I agree. I don't know if I agree with that. Like maybe like if you're specifically talking erotic fiction, maybe
Nope.
if we're like
Reading in general.
Yeah, I gotta disagree. I think that reading definitely skews more towards the men. Like, who do you think is reading? Do you think it's all these girls? I don't know. I can't tell you a single girl that I know that's sitting here.
You said
probably
reading for pleasure.
Yeah, reading
Yeah.
for joy,
Yeah,
not
to be
not like
fair. He
schematics
wasn't
or
talking
like
about, like,
textbooks.
or any of
Yeah,
that shit.
but I'm saying like if like what girl do you know is going to be sitting here reading? I don't know the like Warhammer 40K Chronicles or something like. Or the
Some
rough
men
trade.
read. I just
A
happen to
lot,
think that a
a lot.
majority of them
I
are
think
gay
so.
or they're women.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting here like
I don't know about
I'm
a
hearing
majority
this.
that are gay. That's
And then, like, when
Yeah.
you say read for pleasure,
Okay.
I'm thinking about all these old guys that read like World War II history novels, like or like Civil War
that's
novels.
definitely a fucking.
That's
hold
not
on,
the gay. It's
hold
not
on.
the gay
But
men
that's
and
minority.
the women for
but
that.
that's where I wanted to go with this, right? And I don't mean to make this like the whole topic. This doesn't need to be the thing, okay? All right. But since Corey brought it up because
List
he's a
of
pervert,
things that are fucking gay that give women the ick. Dudes reading, check.
but like I think there are different forms of. Okay, I can agree there are different forms of reading, or genres at the very least, that are populated by different, groups.
Yeah,
Now,
erotica's
when we're
probably
talking
mostly
about
feminine. High fantasy's probably mostly men, nerds.
yeah, right. But like, so when Ali, I'm guessing right now, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing when I talked to you, but when I mentioned erotic fiction to you, you were thinking of like the supermarket book, right? That like someone picks up and looks and you see like women reading out in the train.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, you're probably absolutely correct. However, what I was talking about is on the internet. So on the internet, there's these sites, right, that you can go to that have a whole bunch of different types, right? And there, and again, this is my intuition, right? So I'll state that. But it seems to me from like the looking at the comment sections, looking at like what seems to be like the gender of the people who read these things, and then the who seems to be the target audience of the stories, it seems like there's a lot of men. And it seems to me always that it was more men than not on those types of sites. But like, that's like, that doesn't have the publishing history and cultural, it's not the same cultural artifact as holding a book on a train, reading something dirty,
Yeah, you
right?
just scroll it on your phone.
I would say this.
Yeah.
So I would say that if I were to wager a guess, right, I would say that reading for some form of erotica or sexual pleasure, right, is likely tied, is likely a protective factor in the way that you engage in, and this is purely hypothetical, right, not hypothetical, but like this is a hypothesis. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying my intuition here, is that there may be a protective factor in reading, and that you're separated from the sex act itself, and that you're separated from the danger of engaging in the act. And so in general, I would say that women probably read more erotica because the idea of being with an aggressive, violent, maybe a potential BDSM relationship or like a bad boy, whatever it may be, may be something that like they might want to be protected from, but still engage with.
100%.
Like a Don Draper type.
And then when when you talk
From the
when you
50s.
talk about going onto like an internet website where they're incredibly kink heavy and the kinks are going to be more extreme, then you probably start to tip the scales towards men, because men are the ones that have sexual imprinting and we know from a scientific perspective are far more likely to develop kinks, whereas women, when they have things in their past or personality changes, trauma, etc., they don't tend to develop kinks so much as they tend to develop hypo and hypersexualism, right? They tend to be more sexually aggressive or less sexually aggressive, whereas men like randomly get a foot fetish, right? It's just the way our sexuality differs. And so that would be probably my best guess as to why erotica and romance leans towards women, but then like the really creepy, kinky, crazy shit on the internet might start to lean towards men because they're engaging in a kink that they might not want to tell other people about.
Okay.
Also,
right.
Prime, like just bouncing off of what Scott said, I think women are probably more conscientious of the way that women are treated in porn, in actual videotaped pornography. And I think that that's a concern that women have, like far more, probably more so in comparison to men. I think like I know, like I've spoken to other women, like there's more of a care as to what's going on. And so if you read something, you are able to indulge in something sexual without worrying about like the participants on the screen, which is another reason like why erotica might appeal more to women as opposed to men.
Yeah.
Wait, are you saying that?
That's more
Just to
minor
clarify, you're
factor than we
saying.
think.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what you're saying. You're
I
saying
agree,
that
though.
people are concerned about the porn actors and actresses, like they're worried.
Women
Like-
do, yeah.
Mid, like I'm cranking one out. They're like, I hope that there's nothing bad happening here. Like,
Well, no,
Doesn't
they
work
don't
like
seek
that.
out.
Women-
I
They
don't,
just wouldn't
Hold on.
crank one out. Is the
I don't.
yeah,
The
It's,
idea.
it's not that crazy. I don't watch porn for the very same reason. Like when I have a pivotal moment where I stopped watching porn. I was watching pornography and I saw a girl and she had on one of her knuckles, she had the word fuck tattooed on her knuckles. And I was all into it.
Yeah,
It was very aggressive. It was my type of thing. And then the other knuckles
This is all
later in
foreign
the
to Gibbs, I'm
pornography.
sure.
Yeah, I gotta
said
say,
so hold on. I'm almost
Kids?
done. Shut
Does it say
don't
kids?
interrupt me.
No, Gibbs.
No, it says fuck on one knuckles, and then later in the porn I saw her other hand and it said you dad. And I realized that her
Put that
knuckles
on what?
said fuck you
She put
dad.
that on the knuckles.
And I was just sitting there and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. As females on the internet describe the ick, I had the ultimate ick, right? I was just like, I'm out. This is fucking horrible. And then I watched Dr. Drew Celebrity Rehab when I was younger. And I remembered all of that with like Penny something. I can't remember her last name or whatever, but one of her names was Penny. And she talked about like just the industry and like the trauma and the drug abuse and like everything. And I was just like, I can't do it. Like I can't get off to it. Like it's
Sure.
just-
I don't want to.
Yeah, I had a very
sorry.
similar thing happen to me, Scott.
Yeah, DB feels the same way. If you want to say your piece there, but it's not the focus I wanted to have on. But go ahead, DB.
you didn't pick a topic.
Well, there's, I mean, I can tell you, it's just very similar. I think I've told this to you before. I had a very similar situation happen. Right? I was watching porn. I wasn't even really watching. I was just looking for something to watch. Right in my bed, middle of the fucking night. Figured I'd get one off really quick, and I'm just scrolling through random ass videos. Not even just like skipping to the middle of the video to see what's going on, and then going to the next one, trying to find something cool. Right, and then I get to this video where I remember this woman with her legs in the air. Right. And these two guys standing over her in the fucking grodiest looking hotel ever. And I remember very clearly, like the guy that looks down at her and it's like, oh yeah, bitch, dick in the ass, balls in the pussy, or some shit like that. Right? 'Cause he had this like dick in her ass and his balls in her pussy, or the other way around, one of these, right? And I remember just like hearing that, and then looking at her face, and then looking at his face, and the other guy that was there looking at his face, and I could tell none of them wanted her to be there. Right? They all looked extremely uncomfortable, but they were like forcing themselves through it.
Yeah.
And I just had like this feeling like, oh shit,
So-
I'm getting off on these people who are just trying to pay their fucking rent, who are probably desperate as fuck, and it's disgusting. Yeah, I just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean the stats don't match up what y'all are saying though. Like here, I'm gonna post some stats right here. But like if you go look up the for women category on any of these websites, it's like mainly like the most hardcore shit you've ever seen. Like they're tied up, it's public disgrace, there's like 9 dudes running a train on them. And that's the for women category, right? And then when I look at the stats, it matches this up. For women is like plus 202%. So apparently, like I don't know, but the stats are saying that the women are watching the more.
Those are two different claims.
let-
Those are different claims.
Oh, go ahead. If FQ wants to
You're
give it
not
a try.
attacking the actual claim. Yeah, it's fine.
I am attacking the actual claim. I don't know how you're missing that.
No, you're not.
FQ.
No, you're not.
FQ, give it a try. You want to say something?
Okay, I don't want to interrupt the back and forth, but just a couple of things. So I could be wrong, and I'm going off of memory here. But if memory serves, I looked at like the statistics of like what was the most popular porn categories for women like a few years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the number one was lesbian porn. I'm pretty sure that's still. I'm not sure if that's still true, but I think it's true. And the specific act that was described was oral sex being performed on women, which is one of the things that like I think it's the number one category that women seek out. And I agree with you. If you scroll down like the list, like I think gangbang is there like in the list of things that women like, but it's way down the list. And I don't think like solo porn, I'm pretty sure is like one of the things that was listed, solo male porn. Most of the like when I'm thinking
this has to do with anything.
Oh, let it finish. Let it finish.
Well, what it has to do with is that like the porn that like women are selecting for, it might be weird, but it's often pornography that like either where the camera is either focused from the woman's perspective, where it's from what she is able to see, or it's focusing specifically on acts that are more likely to result in a female orgasm. So that's why the lesbian porn category. It's not because most women like or think. Well, I mean,
yeah.
I mean that's fair, but my contention isn't that. My contention is the claim is more the claim that you made, right? Or I don't know that you necessarily like stood by it as like a hardcore claim, just like kind of how I was, like a hypothesis, right? Is the concept that females might tend to be more conscientious and check out of porn entirely. So that wouldn't be measuring those females. It would only be measuring the females that hadn't checked out of porn in
the category
video,
rejected
video
Pornhub.
So
not visiting.
right. So if they're two different claims. It's like, yeah, if women that do watch porn, even if they wanted to watch like the most violent stuff and it was all like hybristophilia, like, you know, inmate rapes girl, like whatever, like over and over again, it wouldn't matter because the claim would still be fairly true that more women had switched over to erotica because of their concerns with the porn industry. Like it wouldn't matter what type of porn that those that weren't those women were consuming.
I think that it's
Hold on,
probably.
Can you tell me what hybristophilia is?
I'm looking it up right now.
It's the attraction. Okay. It's an attraction to criminality.
Okay,
yeah.
So like girl liking thug dudes, or like liking like guys in prison,
about that a few weeks
or
ago.
like, well, you could even say liking the bad boy is like a soft variant of hybristophilia.
Yeah, also,
right?
conversation about
liking
that
someone. Yeah, I mean, like, but I was just taking the most extreme stance there, right? Like, it wouldn't matter.
So I can. Here's a couple of things. So I think that like the reason we're going to the gas station Harlequin romance novel is because like that's what most people's experience of like what erotica is. But as like Prime said, the way that like people experience like written erotica today in the 21st century is very different than like, you know, how most of us probably remember encountering it at the library or in the gas station, right, or, you know, at the local,
like, they're at home,
right,
on their phone. Like they're not trying to be seen buying that.
Yeah. So, but on top of that, with the advent of the internet, because like in the past, if you wanted to buy porn, you had to go into the store to buy the DVD or to buy the magazine. You had to be seen, right? That's a reason I think, I don't know, I'm not going to stand really strongly. I'm guessing that's a reason like why women, like why there's this idea that like erotica is for women and porn is for men. I would guess that probably like, it would probably would have felt pretty intimidating for a woman in 1990 to walk into like a weird like porno like flick store to like buy a DVD and to leave, right? It's probably a lot less threatening to go to the gas station.
Yeah, VHS. You mean?
Positing something crazy. What if also dudes are just more likely to make it known that they're there or to comment simply because dudes have post-nut clarity, right? Like, I don't know if anybody here has been, I don't know if Fairy Queen, I don't know if you previously were a man. I don't think you were, right? But so from the male experience, right? Like girls, I have been told by girls that like, you know, like, oh, you just wanted someone for sex, right? Oh, you just wanted them for sex and then you threw them away when you were done with them. And it's like, no. I thought I liked you. And then I came and then I realized I don't like you at all.
That is
right? Like
real
dudes,
thing, though.
Right, like dudes post-nut clarity can be like shocking. And so like I wonder if dudes are just like nut and then they're just like, I have to comment about how fucked up this scene was. Like they just get nerdy about something or like whatever, and girls are just like not involved in that. And so there's like a kind of like a availability bias where like you see dudes and types of dudes commenting and saying things, and so the assumption is that there are more men here, but like the women are like the silent majority, as Trump or Hitler would say.
The women
right? Like,
aren't
they're
going to
just
comment because the
reading but not
guys are
saying
going to.
anything.
The women aren't going to comment because the second there's a woman in the comment board, all the men are going to go and add and DM that woman. It's more of a, I would say it's more of a privacy thing.
that
It's
too,
more,
yeah.
that's realistically what it is, right? Like women don't want to reveal.
If
to
you have
be
an
like,
account on a
you know,
porn site, I feel like you're like these seem like the kind of people that are seeking that kind of shit out, right? Like, what kind of person makes like an account on a porn site? That's fucking weird.
Yeah.
I also want to say Fabian touched on something very important.
Some people want to save categories. They want to save favorite videos. Listen, man, I understand. It's a social
Fucking
media
weird.
at the end of the
Right.
day. I've scrolled the comment section once, and there are little communities of people hanging out in there. You know,
communities there. No, he's 100% right.
Check
these
the live
sociopaths
streams.
who save
But yeah,
like a
Fabian
terabyte of porn to their fucking computer.
Fabian touched on something very important though, which is
crazy.
the post-nut clarity. This is why you shouldn't wait until you get married to have sex.
No, that's just
'Cause what if you
emotionally
get married?
unintelligent person.
What if you get married and all of a sudden your dick rejects them? You know, like you wasted all those time, dating them.
That's wonderful. Okay, so I wanted to like rewind back a little bit in this conversation. I just want to rewind back a little in this conversation because I like I said, I wanted this to be very limited in scope, but well, this is what happens when I don't pick a topic, like Scott said, right? Like the only thing I wanted to like address really is
Also,
like whether
I might lose power. I don't know. It's like storming like crazy out here.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Hope that doesn't happen. Is like the ratio between women and men on these sites. And I've gone to a few sites, not just like one site that I've looked at. I've gone to, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I like it a lot. So, yeah. But like looking at the types of stories, right? And like the stories that get like the most, the categories that get the most attention, these feel like they're targeted towards men. Now, I know that women, to be clear, I know that women take part in this, and I know that women can have extreme imaginations. So, like, I have like a few stories in my head that like are there, like they're like nightmare fuel, right? Like the worst shit, and all of those stories written by women. Every single one of them written by a woman. Like women can take it there if they want to. Like I guarantee you. In terms of like weird fetish and shit, right? Like yeah. But
This is about ratios is all I was saying.
Yeah. I know ratio. I hear you, right? And then I've brought this up many times before, right? Like anytime the subject comes up, I've said it. Look, in any site that I've gone to, right? The biggest category, and take what you will out of this, the biggest category always seems to be mother and son stories. I don't know what to do with that. Leave that there for you to contemplate. But like that is like that category gets a ton of fucking attention. It could be women, could be a lot of women there, maybe. I don't think so. Anyway,
I'll say something.
Real quick, just let me clarify because I kind of jumped in. So there's just a bunch of websites where there's books being written, fiction, and men seem to be the ones that are. I'm like trying to catch up with what.
They're not necessarily book length or anything like that. They just could be short stories or like longer than short stories, right? They
Like
could have
Reddit posts,
multi-chapters.
maybe?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could be like a Reddit post length, but they could be much longer than that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the because it's not in the form of a book, it can be whatever length. Right, so some of them can be very, very long. Some of them extremely short, like a page, one pager. You know, it just depends.
Okay.
And yeah,
So it's like a forum. So is it like a forum? More like a forum?
It's not. I mean, some of them are forums. Others are like the ones I've gone to are just like straight up sites where like here's a category. Click on the category, and then here's a bunch of stories in that category.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
What's the question? I got bored. What's the question?
It's not important. Yeah, I already answered it. FQ, go ahead.
I think Lactoid was going to say something. I'll go after him.
You after him? Okay.
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of network issues, so I apologize if this has already been gone through. But just so we're all clear, women are much, much more likely than men are to view hardcore sex, pornography, rough sex, gangbang, bondage, double penetration, threesome, fisting, orgy, squirt by significant margins, more so than men. I think women are really just like corrupting influences, right? They're just sex hungry harpies, and they're coming after us and trying to corrupt us.
Suck us dry. It might be another way of
It's already been said,
saying that.
Lactoid. You missed it when you had the network issue.
Just making sure. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, FQB. You asked to follow that one, and I didn't.
I'm gonna ignore the last comment. I know we're talking. This is an aspect of erotic fiction that's different. Well, it's not always different about some. There are some pieces of pornography that would be similar to this, but there's a lot of fiction that is erotic fiction that is literary, that is beautiful. Even if it has smut written all throughout the pages, the fact that it is like it's written, it gives it a sort of aura of artistry. Like when you pick it up, that isn't necessarily there. Like if you're just on Pornhub and you're just clicking on, gang bang fisting, person, is being tortured or whatever, right? So that's a flavor that's on top that makes erotic fiction also appealing, right? And I've spoken to a couple. I know a few sex workers, and like one of the things that is actually it's pretty sad. Like that's something that they told me, which was that they viewed their work like of photographing their bodies like as basically a form of art. They viewed it as a way of self-expression, a way of celebrating like the human body, what it looks like, the female nude. Yeah, but that's exactly the problem, right? Like the problem is that like then you have the market, and the market really is
positive feminism on society. Write a dissertation.
Well, I think that like that's an aspect. There's a piece, I haven't read it, but it's a good. I want to read it. It's by Susan Sontag, and she talks about like how we put like some categories that are definitely pornographic in the category of literature, and we put pornography and erotica over here. When in reality, there's the walls between these two different like categories are actually a lot thinner. And it's mostly like it chalks it up to like how good you are as a writer, as to whether or not it's considered erotica as opposed to it being considered to be a form of art, right? So like you can probably like think of like some sex workers, some OnlyFans people who sell naked pictures of their frontal body, right? And we would call that pornography, and it is pornography, right? But we don't think that like when you go to the art museum and you see a naked sculpture of a woman, right? And you don't think that like when you go and you see a painting, or when you see that's actually
I do. I don't get how we don't
view it as pornographic.
Statue of David.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's sexual. Yeah, it's sexual. It's erotic. It's 100%. I don't get how it's not. I mean, just because. Okay, I get that it's art. I get that it's art. Like, everyone wants to interpret like statues as art, or like you're trying to say like words are art in a book. It can be artistic. Blah blah blah. At the end of the day, it was just an example of like what was sexy at the time, and.
Well, so it is books, that, but it's not merely that.
With the thing, I think we all understand women are more verbal, men are more visual. So I think just because women are getting off by reading books, why? It's this: you're reading the book, they're getting off. Just because they have the ability to do it in book form doesn't change the difference that when men are watching regular porn, they're getting off. And
but you're making like Susan Sontag's point, which is that like a lot of things that we consider to be art, like could actually be considered to be pornographic. But the reverse of that is also true, where you have things that are considered to be pornography or considered to be erotica, but are also pieces of literature. They are also pieces of art. So like an example of this would be Lady Chatterley's Lover, right? That was an extremely scandalous book. It was the watershed moment. It was banned for obscenity, and it had tons of sex scenes that were written all throughout the book. The whole story, it's about a woman who has an affair with the gamekeeper. It's in the early 20th century England, and she gets pregnant and she has this affair, and it's this scandalous thing, right? And it is that, and it is about sex, and that's an aspect of the book. Like it's erotic fiction, but it's not merely erotic fiction, and it's not only about sex.
Well, yeah, just like sex scenes in movies don't make the whole movie about sex scenes, but when a movie has a 45-second sex scene that you're staring at, it's kind of hard to take that away from the movie.
Or if it's longer,
I would say that my big issue here, right? So I'm going to quote from The Romantic Manifesto by Ayn Rand, real quick, because I think it shows the actual problem here, which is that our society is completely devoid of a grounded philosophy of art, because art is objective. Art is showcasing what one's values are and projecting them to the world, and those things can be seen and measured. And what we have done instead is we have let 17th century philosophers try and claim that like the world is subjective, that art is this completely subjective, unknowable thing that has this different opinion, and is put it into this mystical category of like this unknown thing. And you can really only understand it kind of if you're super educated, but if you're not educated in these things, you don't understand the context. And so what ends up happening is our society takes things that represent intuitively, we take the things that represent the values and the history that we enjoy, and we call that art. And then any of the things that don't represent or don't kind of mesh with us, we say is not art. But in reality is that art is something of a projection of that message. And when those messages are bad, they're not aesthetically pleasing, and there's evil present in them, we reject that as art instead of appropriately understanding what it is, which is bad art. It's evil art. So to quote from Ayn Rand, art is a selective recreation of reality according to an artist's metaphysical value judgments. Man's profound need of art lies in the fact that his cognitive faculty is conceptual, i.e., that he requires knowledge by means of abstractions, and he needs the power to bring his widest metaphysical abstractions into his immediate perceptual awareness. Art fulfills this need by means of selective recreation. It concretizes man's fundamental view of himself and of existence. It tells man, in effect, which aspects of his experience are to be regarded as essential, significant, and important. That is my argument, is that art is actually objective. And that's our problem with these blurred lines, is that we're calling evil art art, and then being like, oh, you just don't get it, or dismissing it as not art at all when it's bad art. It's telling us bad things.
What's
Okay, well,
an example of evil art? Well, go ahead.
yeah, no, you go first, Corey.
I was gonna.
Yeah, no, I give you an example of evil art. Yeah. So that recent statue, that bronze statue that was supposed to be, celebrating the embrace between Coretta Scott King. Yeah, right.
Oh my
And
God.
you can see in it, collectivist nature, the fact that it dehumanizes the individual man, the fact that it brings these two together as opposed to celebrating the heroic individual.
There's a reason why I
as
asked you what's
he,
evil art.
it's a disembodied figure as opposed to the icon of the heroic man that achieves great things for prosperity. It's this broken apart, mangled mess, and all of that is present if you research the artist that does it. That is an extreme collectivist, extreme communist, extreme leftist that is against. Is all for critical race theory and those elements, and he is projecting with that art his disdain for liberalism, his disdain for the heroic individual, his disdain for liberty and freedom, and instead is trying to recreate a collective.
There is absolutely projection going
within
on
our
here.
society.
No,
it's
evil
so
100%.
obvious. You just look at the hands and the arms, and you get the collectivists and the CRT.
Dude,
and
it
all
looks
that
like a dick. Like
Well, that's a projection.
That is
gay art too. On top of that,
ugly. It's
projection
bad. It's bad
happening.
in every way. What am I projecting? His political philosophy onto the
Let's
art
rewind
that
the
he
tape for
creates
about 2
to
minutes.
be a message
right.
of what he believes to the world.
I got some questions.
You're just using the term projecting.
No,
So
I
back it up.
No, what Corey said. What Corey said. Like I just copy and paste what each said, and that's what I mean.
Well,
Absolutely.
if you copy and paste it, that means you believe it. So back it up too, both of you. What am I projecting?
yeah, well,
I'm
one
projecting
that
his own stated political values that are obvious
He doesn't
in
like
all of his
liberty.
artwork
At the
onto
end
the
of that, you
face.
say he
So-
doesn't like liberty.
Yes.
Yeah,
Everyone
all right,
that
thank you.
is a supporter of critical race
Got
theory
it.
is against
Thank you.
liberty.
And
Obviously.
projection happening. Moving on.
You don't know what
Brian,
projection
you gotta be
means.
nicer.
What
It's
is
tax
projection?
day. It's a national day of mourning for us. Okay, you can really.
Prime guys, it is true. Right? I'm fucking
Not
mad.
for you, Lacto. You're
It is prime guys. What's
My flies at
projection?
half staff.
Without Googling it, what's projection?
So
Freud's
when-
defense mechanism of projection. What is it? Without Googling it,
Are,
tell
are
me
we
now.
really doing definition debate on projection?
I can see you Googling shit. Go
I'm
ahead
not-
and tell
well,
me.
I'm not
What's
in my
We're
projection?
head.
having a lovely
It's not
conversation
Google, it's
about
not- it's
art
not
and
GPT.
beauty, and
Why is
now
it-
we're
Oh,
mixing
no, we're just
this.
talking about porn, not projection. God.
What is projection?
I thought we were talking about
Wait,
You
wait,
can
why- wait,
project
wait.
porn onto
Why
a
does
wall.
it matter? Why does it matter what projection is? We don't care about semantics here, Scott. In your world,
Because he
semantics don't
won't-
matter.
He won't back it up. He says he's
No, no.
copying and pasting it.
But we don't.
I don't
Maybe
think he
that's a
knows
good
what it
idea.
means.
You.
We don't need a
Jesus
definition.
I don't
Christ.
think he knows what it means.
I think that's
Wait.
Rick,
Is gangbang evil art because it's
Shut the
collectivist?
fuck up.
Okay.
Shut the fuck up and back
I
up
think
your
it's
claim.
beautiful. First,
If you're gonna claim that I'm
Never go to a
projecting
public
and that I'm
sex show?
engaging in a Freudian self-defense mechanism, right? Explain it to me.
You said you were engaging
Plenty
in
of time to stall.
projection.
What is projection?
I'm not stalling. Everyone's talking. What the fuck? You think I'm stalling? I'm literally here, and no, I'm not. I wouldn't Google
Stalling
it.
now.
And no need to do
Hurry
that.
up,
Fuck
Prime.
you. Hold on. Wait. No.
Chop,
I
chop.
will answer. No, I will absolutely answer. Hold on. I gotta keep my hands up because he might think I'm doing something, right? Anyway, I'll keep my hands up. In any
Answer.
case, like, don't tell me about like stalling and taking a long goddamn time to answer a fucking question. All right? You don't lecture me on that. All right? But
While
I'll
also
do
saying
it
shut the
right
fuck up.
now.
He also said shut the fuck up as he was saying don't stall.
Yeah. Exactly.
I was talking to Corey Gamble and Lactoid, not you.
Excuse me.
I kind of have a response to that, Scott. So, and I've had this argument with Lactoid before, but it was about
All right.
language and about
I'll
like
just
the
take that
meaning.
dub.
No,
Wait, I thought
what?
Prime was-
Hold on, no. I'll
Prime's
say
only
it.
an answer.
I'm not. Yeah.
See, Fairy
That's
Queen,
all.
he doesn't want to tell you to shut the fuck up. He doesn't want to say that.
Yeah, he didn't want to
Oh,
say that.
okay.
Yeah, okay, all right. Any which way.
She can have a voice. She just shouldn't be able to vote. That's all.
Wow.
An opinion,
You know,
not a vote.
I shared with Lactoid my opinion on what the slavery thing meant, which I know you hate, and it basically means that women own everything. So really, you all shouldn't be able to vote. I'm the only one that should be allowed to vote on anything. So boo to you.
Projection is right.
I'm talking
when-
about the whole created kids thing. Is that
Your
why?
politics would be so bad.
Prime, are you ever going to tell us what
When-
projection is?
I'm literally
Our
saying
politics
it.
would be
The worst-
amazing. Fuck you. Okay.
I think it'd be funny if Prime never answered. Honestly, that would be the best.
Projection
Prime, why are you
Just
projecting?
hands up, don't shoot the entire panel.
That's hot.
The projection is insane.
Projection right here going on.
It's like I'm not sure necessarily it's always a self-defense mechanism, right? It seems to sometimes be an attack, but I don't know, right? But we could say self-defense mechanism in which you read into others' actions like what you are sensitive about, right? So like you see into them like if you are sensitive about I don't know, being a greedy bastard or being a cheater, right? Being a cheater. And then you start seeing into the other person's actions, your partner's actions, like possible signs of cheating, but you're actually projecting your own insecurities there onto them.
It's a workable
That's-
definition. So
It's
how
amazing
was
what you can
I
do when you have time to
projecting?
Google.
Ah, fuck you.
And we didn't see all of your appendages, Prime. To be fair,
I mean, it's true. I mean, you
were-
didn't see the you didn't see
I don't
the
know. I don't know if you
longest
can
one.
type with your
Screen.
toes.
Right. So Freudian defense mechanism or not, you believe that I'm projecting my opinions onto the art in question. So how is that, or onto the person in question?
Yeah.
Because projection has to be onto the person, not necessarily. I mean, I guess you could take the concept of projection and apply it to objects, but that wouldn't mean what it usually means. But that's fine. Regardless, either projecting onto him or projecting onto art. What did I say that I was projecting onto him that isn't true, that I'm specifically insecure about myself doing or myself feeling?
So in this case, it's not an action insecurity. So that's fair, right? That's not, you're not projecting like some sort of weakness or whatever in your mind on that. But like it's your view of you're showing that it is actually subjective, right? So like you look at this individual, you see that they have, in your mind, communist leanings. I have no idea if that's actually true. And you think CRT.
We did a whole
necessarily-
panel about it. I don't remember if you remember.
I remember we did a long time ago, but I don't remember if this person is actually a communist. But like maybe they stated that somewhere, but I don't know. But in any case, right?
They're
like,
very race obsessed, critical race theorist argument, which obviously is Marx is the founder of critical theory.
Sure. Okay. But in any case, from there, in your mind, you consider communists to dislike liberty and freedom and puppy dogs possibly as well. And then you see that.
Mao did kill a lot of dogs.
Abstract. You see this on this abstract piece of art, right? And like you come in here, you tell us that this is like objective, right? And that like it doesn't require your own you don't have to like worry about your own necessarily psychological lens to look at it, right? Like your own perspective is like separate from this, but it's actually not. I mean, like you see in this art, which is like a bunch of arms, right? Just like a fucking bunch of arms. You see like the loss of liberty and all the other things that you listed there. When it's
so do you disagree with the concept that art is communicating the values of the individual that makes art? Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't.
Depends on the art piece.
Yeah, it depends on the art piece. It depends on like what they're trying to accomplish. Like for instance, like you can. It's so much of our past art, right? At least the like the Western art in a way, right? Is commissioned, right? It's they are asking for a piece, and you can start to read into that like all kinds of things. But it's just like I had a job to do. They wanted it like this, like they wanted their kids like done in this style, and I did that thing.
Okay,
right?
so
yeah,
so if someone is commissioned to do art, and they create a piece of art that does not in any way, shape, or form showcase how that person feels, what that person believes, any message that that person is attempting to tell, and doesn't showcase any of those things, and it's purely to the T what the other person asked for, is that art, or is that just a construction project where they followed schematics? Because if no part of me whatsoever is in commissioned artwork, then how is that art?
So okay, I'm not saying that there's necessarily no part within a commission. Again, depends on the art, right? Maybe it is actually a construction piece, like you said, right? Like if the other person already has it like mapped out, they're asking you, make this. I don't have the skill to do this, but you do it, right? Then yeah, it might actually be a construction piece.
Construction, yeah.
But
actually,
terms
it would be art of the inventor of the art, right? It would be art of the person that gave you the schematics.
Yeah. In terms of this particular piece, again, I don't know I don't pretend that I know exactly what the artist want to portray here. They probably actually said it somewhere. I don't remember because we did talk about this years ago. But that doesn't mean
like
that
a whole nother series of exhibits.
Every piece of art that an artist creates, let's say like they are putting themselves into it, that transmits their entire like view on the world, right? Like this piece encapsulates me, right? This could just be one thing. So like I could like if I'm this artist, I could like cooperation and love and I want to capture the struggle of Black Americans that Coretta Scott King I think embodied, and so like and to do that I create a bunch of arms, right? And that's what I do.
The struggle of being cheated on.
It doesn't mean like that. Yeah, and it doesn't talk about like I happen to be a pervert, you know. I don't put that into that art, but like I mean, well, the dick part, you know, that maybe did transmit. But anyway, but the point is like it doesn't necessarily communicate all of me. I know, right? It doesn't necessarily communicate all of me in every piece of art. So even if they did hate liberty, it doesn't mean like
my argument.
It's in there,
right? My argument is that when someone creates art, that what has occurred in the genuine process of creating art is their view of the world. All of who they are is encapsulated in that art. Now, that doesn't mean that each individual brushstroke, right, can be broken down, in a way for us to be able to analyze or critique the art in such a way to prove that every belief that they have is visualized there, right? What I'm saying is that when you are a person, you go through the act of making art, you are someone that has a concept in the mind. And when you have a concept in the mind and you make manifest that concept in the mind, it is a necessary element, one that cannot be separated, is your view of the world and your view of who you are and your identity and how the world is, because your mind is what houses those things. Your mind is what creates that image, and your body and mind connecting is what is that process of art, making manifest your imagination into reality, and that art takes an element of who you are. Now, I'm not saying that you're necessarily capable of being able to connect the dots post fact, right? I'm not saying that post hoc we can look at the art and say these are the elements that exist. That is not what I mean by objective. What I mean by objective is that the man has a mind that views the world, and that is present in the creation of all art, where he tries to make his perception held in the mind into reality. And that when you can then go and look at that and look at all the things they've said, look at their ideas, and you can attempt to, as an individual, critique and understand it, but that doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes, and that doesn't even mean that you might not be projecting, as you put it. But what I am saying is, I asked for a piece of evil art.
If I draw a boat on a piece of paper right now, and say it's a good boat, I draw it on the paper, and it's a real good, pretty boat, nice boat, and I go, look at this wonderful piece of artwork that I made. Can you tell me exactly what in that boat represents me and all of me in that artwork?
You want to be a sailor?
No.
You want to be a sailor?
I
So
want
you
to be
made
a
a boat.
Admiral Gibbs.
Admiral Gibbs. And you see yourself sailing the Gulf of Texas.
You see yourself controlling the fleet.
Protecting Texas, protecting the coast,
There you
protecting the border.
There we go. All right. All right. Perfect.
But that's not an argument against what I said, of course, right?
So, Scott, go ahead. You can answer that, but then I want FQ as well. Go ahead.
No, you just proved what you said.
Well, just very quickly, like it's not necessarily whether or not you can look at a piece of artwork and immediately know the person. What I'm saying is it's a necessary component to realize that art serves a functional purpose, and that is man reinterpreting the way that he idealizes himself and the world into a piece that is made manifest in reality. And often art is used to tell stories that we can't necessarily put into words, that we use art all the time to try and when something is at the edge of our understanding, we play with the chaotic elements at the boundaries and attempt to make manifest things that we aren't necessarily even able to articulate, much less the viewer is able to articulate by envisioning it, but we kind of feel it sometimes, and we feel it because their values and their ideas are present within the art itself.
Oh, so let's go to FQ and then Corey, and I have other thoughts on this, but FQ and Corey, please.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Scott, and I disagree with you. So I would agree with you that I think that art, especially good art, does follow. Maybe standard isn't the right word, but I do think there are some objective principles that are often used, like in paintings, that are used in photography, that are used in writing. I find it very frustrating when people say that like art is entirely subjective and there's nothing to it. And I can get into my rant about like how that impacts art programs and MFA programs and how it causes people to like expunge a ton of money on programs. That's a whole other conversation for another time. But I disagree with like a couple of things that so I agree with you that there are some objective principles behind beauty. And I do think that like when you sit down to create something, I agree with that. I disagree with the idea that like, I know that you're not saying that you sit down and post hoc you can connect the dots, but I think sometimes the thing that you want to express is not always the message that was received. And I know that that's a read, and I'm not going off of a reader's response, like take. Just
I don't disagree with that. That's not a disagreement of anything that I would say. So that's not a disagreement with me. Like I don't disagree that people do art poorly, or that it's misinterpreted because someone is some form of genius, right? I mean, looking at literature, right? How often is literature misinterpreted? Literature has an objective goal in mind. It is absolutely objective that someone has opinions that they put forward into a narrative form that are expressed, but that doesn't mean that people always get it.
Yeah, but they don't always get it. But it's not just that like one person doesn't get it. It's not just that two people don't get it. It's if the majority of people that pick up the book that you read and flipped through this book, and the vast, vast majority of your audience share does not get the message that you wanted to express, I don't know if that is the message that you expressed. If most people, like an average, reasonable person of average intelligence, picks up this artwork and doesn't see that, I don't know that you express that, right? And I don't even know, like, not just that you didn't express it poorly, but that you didn't express it at all. And sometimes, like I think you probably would, I think you might agree with me on this. Like, sometimes the thing that you express is a value that you hold, but it's not one that you feel comfortable with expressing. And so, like, the work of art sort of acts as a Freudian slip, where you think you're saying something and you think you're arguing for one thing, but actually you're expressing something, a hidden subconscious desire that
so
you
there's two
have that's
arguments
sort of
here.
seeping up.
There's two arguments here, right? So argument A is that if you express value X, but everyone believes that you expressed value Y, we can reshape reality and say that you did
No.
not express value X, because reality is now designed to be interpreted by the masses, and that the masses can rewrite reality itself and reinterpret reality because you expressed X, but they believed through some social contagion that you expressed Y, and therefore X has magically converted into Y. It's argument
No,
A. Argument B, no, I'll just two arguments. Argument B is that if you believe you expressed X, but you're unaware due to your own insecurities or a lack of knowledge of the self, that deep down you actually expressed Y because that is how you actually see the world, right? Then you actually expressed Y, and everyone recognizes that you expressed Y. That's still supporting my argument that art is objective, and that who the person is represented in their artwork, even if they themselves do not, cheekily, I say this, know thyself, right? Not knowing oneself doesn't necessitate that your art doesn't communicate your actual values, because it is the process of recreating the conceptual being that makes material their conceptions of reality.
Well, but I think that might be the word that I want to touch on, which is the word value. Okay. Like Corey and I had this disagreement a couple of weeks ago. Okay. I don't know if the thing that, knock it off, Corey. Okay. That's enough out of you, Dr. Campbell. Okay. I actually think we would be a hilarious pair in a buddy cop movie, Corey. I feel like I would be the chaotic one slamming.
You can be the bad cop.
I will be the terrible cop. Okay. I will bully them into submission. It'll be great. Okay. But anyway, but Scott, like I had this conversation with Corey, like sometimes the thing that you desire or that you like isn't the thing that you value. Like it runs contradictory to your value, even if it is the thing that you express about yourself, right? That's often
proof that you do value it, right?
No, but I disagree with that. I think that I don't think that's a proof that you value it. I think it goes, okay, the classic example would be the gay politician, like who is extremely I'm sorry, like we have to go down this road again. Yeah, I understand.
You're denying reality.
I'm not denying reality. I'm stating an example of reality. I'm saying that there are people who have values, and I'm using sex as an example, okay? They have a sexual value, okay, that goes contrary. Like they don't have a sexual value. They have values around sexuality or around art or around fill in the blank that runs contrary to how they actually feel and how they actually go through life. Like their intellectual self is not like
contradictions don't exist in reality. Contradictions cannot exist in reality. They do not exist in the real world. If you believe that you found a contradiction, then you need to go back to your premises. One of your premises is wrong. The premise in the example that you gave is an openly anti-gay politician has a secret gay lifestyle that they feel some shame and connection to. The truth is that the openly anti-gay stance is a cover and a lie for the shame that they feel for their sexuality, because
but why do they
feel
have shame?
that it is right, but they have a value, right? But it doesn't run contradiction to another value. They value one thing more. They value the gay sex they're having in the hotel or in the bathroom with the little twink, Ted Haggard style, and methamphetamine more than the presumed shame that they have. And they also value their popularity, so they hide it.
Hold on.
They value other things, but these are not contradictions.
All the same arguments I made a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you
not contradictions.
definitely have a thing for like a kink that you're definitely like. There's definitely a major aspect like people that are like powerful individuals wanting to say to have a dominatrix. That is and be dominated. Like there is like I get what you're trying to say.
Where's the contradiction?
But I don't buy that there's a contradiction, like or like no, you can definitely have something because it is contradictory.
Yeah.
You want the opposite of what you are into. Like if you're a dominant personality, like you're whatever. I get what you're trying to say, and it's this like some kind of well thought out, like deep down they prefer this over that. But it's only they wouldn't even prefer that if they didn't have this value they held that made the thing shameful.
No,
but he's saying
performative contradiction, right? So like, let's say I have a pack of cigarettes in my hand, right? And I tell you all, I hate cigarettes. I've never enjoyed the feeling of smoking cigarettes, and I never will enjoy the feeling of smoking cigarettes. There's no part of me in my entire life that could ever desire to put a cigarette in my mouth, light it, and inhale it. And I tell you all of this while I put a cigarette in my mouth, light it, inhale it, and go, oh, right? That's a performative contradiction. You can see that I am lying. My action is proving that my stated value
That's not what I'm talking
that
about.
I'm telling you is not true. There is no such thing as contradictions in reality. They cannot exist. If you believe they can't exist, then
You
you
believe
must throw
hypocrites
out
exist?
Aristotelian logic.
Do you
No,
believe hypocrites exist?
Hypocrisy is not hypocrisy is
it's a
not
hypocrisy.
contradictions in reality.
Yeah, like I let's not get caught up
Saying one thing and doing another
Let-
is
I think it's very clear what Scott's trying to say here, right? And we don't need to get like caught up in like trying to find examples, whatever, right? Like this is a limit.
I have
think for
hijacked
some
the
people are
topic
having,
and now art is objective. Let's go.
yeah, it's fine, But like I think it's a limit of our vocabulary, the way we use language here, is like where we're running into issues. But like okay, so we understand what you're trying to say. F, do you have anything else to say? Then we're going to Corey and Lactoid.
Yeah, I think the word that you're more is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, Scott. Because I would agree with you, right? Like clearly, like they value, like having sex, having gay sex more so than this other value of shame and guilt around the fact that they are gay and they want to have gay sex. I agree that they value that more because they're doing it. But the point,
What
but
is the
that doesn't.
opposite of I
but
want to
that-
have
but that-
gay sex?
Let me let her finish. Let her finish. Go ahead. Finish your point. Get it
I'm
out.
just trying to do basic logic, but it's okay. You're missing the point. It's okay.
God damn it! Come on, Scott. Be nice.
No,
Jesus
I'm
Christ,
not
I've
saying
seen
you
you a
don't
long
understand.
time.
No, like you
I
just
don't
don't understand the
understand.
difference
It's
between
basic logic,
contrary
fair
and a
queen.
contradiction. You
I
don't understand the difference
agree,
between a
it's basic
contrary
logic,
and a
right?
contradiction.
BL.
Contraries aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Contradictions are. What is the opposite of I want to have gay sex? What is the opposite? What is the
I don't.
contradiction of I don't?
This just
Sociologic. There we go. We're there.
Okay.
I don't want to have gay sex.
Okay,
It is not
okay.
a contradiction to say I want to have gay sex and I feel some sort of shame when I have gay sex, right?
No,
In
but
fact,
it is a
shame can be a sexually pleasurable thing.
Well, but
The
like
two aren't
okay.
contradictions.
Yeah, but reason no, they can be contradictions. They can be because if the reason why you have shame in the first place, like why do you feel ashamed? You feel ashamed because you have a value that you are violating by choosing to indulge this other value of sexual pleasure more than this value, okay?
You don't
So
actually
it's
value it.
You do value
You just
it. You
think you
just
do.
value it less. That's what I'm saying,
No,
right?
you think you do. You don't like you're not a devout Christian or Muslim, for example, right? A true Christian or a true Muslim, a devout that genuinely believes in the faith and believes in God. If you're out fucking dudes, you just
I don't think that's
you're
true.
you're putting up pretenses. You're saying
What
you
about
value
people who
sex.
have
You
premarital
like
sex
certain-
then?
You like
Yeah,
you like
that's what I
certain
was-
things.
Does it apply to
Yes.
premarital sex? I agree.
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that, as long as it
you
applies to
like
both.
certain things. You're engaging in cafeteria religion, right? As Christopher Hitchens put it.
Right,
You
right.
like certain
Cafeteria
aspects
Catholics,
of it,
yes.
Well,
but
no,
the
you're just a
part that
sinner.
goes against what you the part that goes against what you actually believe, which is it's okay to have gay sex or it's okay to have premarital sex, you disregard that. And then you go, "Oh, I'm sorry," when you're not fucking sorry. I mean, you might learn to be sorry because your values
No, but
might
I-
change later.
I mean, or you're just a sinner
How
and
could
people
you not?
sin, and so that
I'll
you
let
can be a
Corey go.
Christian and sin.
I'll wait till for other people to go.
Okay, all right. Corey, Lactoid, Ali, then we'll go back to FQ.
Well, I'm glad this is basically a retread of everything that occurred a couple weeks ago.
Fuck you,
Where
Corey.
to add
God damn you.
Sorry, I wasn't here.
No, but I understand. But so me and Scott, I think, understandably, I think most people recognize that we are pretty much
You
on
and
the opposite
Scott,
ends of-
peas in a pod. For
Yeah, on
once this panel.
but pretty much I'm in alignment with him here, okay, in terms of as an addendum to that, like you can have a value and not know it, okay, as in if you're not, you can behave in a way and not in accordance with your value system if you don't know your value system, where most people don't. Most people think they do, and I'm not saying that I do, but most people aren't aware of their value system, and so your behavior can be a certain way, and you think have a value, and you don't. But ultimately, as pretty much Scott is trying to highlight, your behaviors will be a reflection of your values, where you can say something, but ultimately what rings true if your value system is how you behave. But to ask the question, what I wanted to originally ask, to understand what Scott's saying about art, where, let's say, for example, would you consider this art like me graphing my data or me drawing like a Lewis structure in chemistry? Is that art to you? And if it is or isn't, why or why not? What's the disconnect?
So if you're just graphing data, you're not taking you're I mean, in theory, you're taking your conception of reality and making it manifest materially present in the world, right? But I mean, that's really kind of more of like a linguistic game we're playing here, right? Because what you're doing is you're taking things in reality and then you're thinking about the things in reality and then you're reconceptualizing the thing in reality as exactly what it is because you're just record keeping, right? So you're not actually taking your view of the world with your values and ideas present, because you would call it incredibly bad science, right? If I let my values and ideas reshape the data into whatever numbers I think I ought put there, right? Like you would want it to actually just put what it is in
I don't
reality.
know. If I value truth, I could not value truth, right?
Yeah, but now we're just playing word games with the concept that I'm attempting to give you
No,
linguistically,
no,
right?
no, you don't
We're
want
not
to play
actually
that
talking
word.
about
Like,
the same
yeah,
thing.
but no. Well, I'm
Right,
not
like
gonna go down
you're
that road,
talking
but
about
I think I made my point.
record keeping reality as it is,
No,
right?
no,
To the
a
best of your
graph.
ability.
I don't. If you want to go down the road of whether a graph is reality or
You're
whether a
graphing
Lewis,
data. Right, you're
yeah,
graphing data. You're
but
trying to have
that's
a
a graphical
visualization.
representation. Yeah, it's exactly. It's a visualization of we're
Right, but
trying.
your interpretation isn't present in the graph. Right? Like your interpretation, your values, your bias isn't. And if it is, it's a bad graph. It's bad science.
No, no,
You're in the realm of science. You're in the realm of doing everything you can to accurately portray reality as it is with data that directly correlates to data that is to real
I just don't think
things,
you've done enough graphs in your
experiments,
lifetime,
etc.
enough graphing of data in your lifetime. Because absolutely, yeah, if you have like some graphs are incredibly difficult to graph accurately. Like, have you ever tried to graph something to like 10
Yeah,
decimal
no,
places?
like I understand that there is a visual representation in graphs where there's a bias where you choose what to put on a graph and what not to put on a graph. For example, I've seen messy graphs where there's like too many lines and it's like, look, you should break these down into a couple of different categories and then graph them separately because this is like messy, right? I understand that. So there is some subjective interpretation there that you might phrase it, or I might phrase it objective, in the sense that there is some element of art there, in the sense that how you view reality is present in what you consider to be messy or unmessy, or what looks pleasing to the eye and what looks displeasing to the eye. And that is going to be true, and it is going to be somewhat artistic in the sense that you're, if you value chaotic looking things more than orderly things, right? Then you might choose a slightly different way of representing the data
Or
that
I
looks more
value
chaotic or more
dishonesty and
orderly.
deception, right?
Right. Sure. So I mean, like, that is present there, right? And you could technically call it art, but like, I don't know that gray area and the way that it's put is necessarily like helpful for what I mean
Fair,
for the
fair, as long as you
conversation.
recognize
But
that it's gray.
I'll go with you that there is a gray area to a certain degree when you're
Fair,
making
absolutely fair.
decisions about how you ought graph things. But again, that would be the same thing, right? It just it would you wouldn't feel it as art. I don't think.
Yeah, Vic made my point.
Let's go to Lactoid Ali and back to FQ, and then after that we might try to shift the conversation. But yeah,
To the topic or whatever.
to anything really. But Lactoid, go ahead.
I guess I'm just going to give some of my thoughts. I don't know if this is going to be specifically competitive, but it might be. I'm sort of of the position that artwork is subjective. I'm going to take that position here. I think it can be, it's subjective and it's potentially, I would agree that the author's intention can be an objective question, but their intent could be that the creation should be viewed subjectively. But even if that's not the case, even if the author creates a piece of art that they want to be viewed objectively, it doesn't actually mean that that art has to be viewed in that particular way, or that it's incorrect to view that art in that particular way. Because ultimately, this is simply a tool that I'm going to use to whatever my purposes are, right? So, some of my favorite authors, like Franz Kafka, for example, writes works that are specifically ambiguous, right? The point is that perhaps there's something in his mind that he's trying to get across, but he wants to hide the ball, and he wants to give the reader an opportunity to either come to his position or perhaps find a position of their own and interpret his work differently than perhaps he intended. I think that's great. I think that's what makes his writing so good. Some other examples I can think of, the manufacturers of Play-Doh, maybe they have some ideas of what can be made out of it, but there's plenty of things that could be made out of it that they really don't hadn't thought of, or maybe they didn't intend for it to be turned into. But of course, you can do what you want with Play-Doh. So I don't necessarily see why my interpretation of anything, as long as I'm not trying to achieve your particular goal or a particular goal, I don't see why I'm locked into, I guess, your perspective or your intention on what the art was supposed to mean. I can agree with you that the artist could be in their mind, perhaps could have ideas of what they want the art to mean that you and I can agree are bad. You and I can agree are evil.
Sure.
But I don't think that necessarily means that it's objectively evil, or that you and I couldn't reinterpret it to mean something perhaps good. This is, I think, part of the art of argument, right? So like somebody will make a point, or perhaps even like draw a painting or draw like a cartoon, a political cartoon. And then you reinterpret it and you say, well, actually, this proves my point because look, like the example that came to my head was there's a picture of like a road that curves, and then there's like through a grass path. It's a shortcut, right? And the shortcut's like the free market, and the long path is like the government. And somebody saw that and was like, all this shows is the free market's bad for the environment because they aren't using the road. They're treading on the grass and killing the grass. And then the counterpoint is, well, it's even better for the environment not to pour all that fucking concrete, right? And so now we're going back and forth about what the actual intention of this art's supposed to mean and which side it backs up more. I don't think that there's necessarily an objective answer there.
So I would say, first and foremost, you haven't done anything to discredit the argument that there is an objective process that occurs through the creation of art and the individual in question. One of the examples you gave was Franz Kafka, and I think his ambiguity is certainly there, but I think it's very obvious that you can see the objective values that he places in his art. For example, if you read Metamorphosis by Kafka, and then you read Franz Kafka's letter to his father, where he discusses the relationship that he has with his father and the relationship of the brutality that he had, that he suffered under, that wasn't necessarily a direct physical brutality, but was a constant entrapment. It was I'm not being violent with you physically, but I'm being oppressive in the ways in which I control you and box you in and make you live in this tiny little thing. And you look at the way that his life revolved around his father trying to force upon him his Jewish culture and faith without actually being present or going to the synagogue. And you can see all of those elements in Metamorphosis by Kafka, right? You can see that the way he views reality is shaped in his literature objectively by the experiences in the life that he had, which is my argument. Your argument is that we can have a subjective interpretation of someone else's art, that we can choose to interpret something into the artwork that isn't there. And so what I would say is that we're playing a little bit with what's actually happening here. Right? I would say that this is a recreation of Fairy Queen's argument, where there is an objective thing communicated by the art. And if you say that that's not there and that that's not what's occurring, you're trying to undo reality. But if you want to say that this artwork pushes or conveys a message, right, unknowingly, because its engagement with reality actually shows the values that you hold, right? And you want to reinterpret the art as you will through that, right? You can understand that there's messy bits that occur when art comes into reality. And what you're actually doing is you're arguing against the fundamental values of the artist itself to say, here's where there's a disconnect between the values you put forward and reality itself. And so, when I look at this art, I can see that this is incorrect and I'm fixing your contradictions. I'm fixing your incorrect values. And I'm saying that reality is actually this way. You're not actually undoing the objective nature of art or the process of art itself, of them projecting their values into their piece, but rather you're looking at it and saying, I view the world differently, and I think that you are wrong and that there are wrong things here. And so I choose to see these things and reconceptualized in the way that I view the art. But it's not you subjectively engaging the art to mean something else. You could try to do that, but you couldn't do that. You could only simply say, I think this art is wrong, and that there is that reality is actually this way. And you can choose to say that it's displaying that in some fashion, but you'd be foolish to do so if the art isn't displaying that thing.
So I feel as though you're loading the language a little bit when you say that I would have to say the artwork is wrong, because obviously I wouldn't say it's wrong because I'm saying it's subjective, right? It's not going to be wrong. Franz Kafka, and Metamorphosis is his most famous story. I like it a lot, actually. It's what made him my favorite author because I interpreted it very differently on something that was actually happening in my life. And so for Franz, it could be that story really spoke, or he was intended to speak to his struggle with Judaism and the different kinds of, when he was making it. This could be what his intention with the artwork is, right? To express himself and to express the struggles that he underwent with the kind of oppressive nature of his father. But when I read it, for me, so I'm sure all of us have had a family member who's gone through like cognitive decline. And one of the things that I noticed with one of my family members that was going through cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, who was being cared for by some of my other family members, was that she was slowly declining, and it feels awful to say, but sort of dragging down everybody else around her. And I began to notice that the family members who were taking care of her were no longer smiling. They were no longer feeling happy. And they were sort of, stuck because they felt obligated to. And this person was a good person, so it's hard to shame her about it. But they felt obligated to care for her. But there was also this sense of resentment. And eventually, when she died, they would never admit to being happy about it, but they were definitely relieved, and they were definitely better off, and they were definitely happier overall. In the Metamorphosis specifically, I think this is on point when it comes to expressing the nature of caring for a family member with disability. I think it's very good.
You're not arguing against the objective reality of art.
Well, hold on.
What you're doing is
I'm getting there.
Let him finish.
Well, yeah. So this really speaks to me, right? And this, I'm interpreting the artwork that is presented to me in perhaps a way that Franz Kafka never thought of. Perhaps he never envisioned me looking at it and relating it so much to what I see within my own family. But I think that story specifically gave me the ability to reflect and interpret and to come to terms with that human experience that I went through. And that's what I think the value of the art actually is. Like the value of helping me get through that part of my life. That's value that I that's my subjective value there. I don't understand why I can't value that.
You're not arguing against the objective nature of art here. All you're saying is that when I read that, there was correlations to my life, right? And it made me understand through the process. It made me maybe told a story to me because of the experiences that I had in my life that correlated with this story, and it made me accept certain realities in the world and in my story because of similarities between these two things. That's not an argument against subjective value of art. In fact, what you're doing is you're supporting my argument. You're supporting that there were values present within that artwork about feelings of helplessness, about the fact that once this burden, right, this bug creature was gone, the family was kind of happy to be rid of it, but no one would really admit it. All of these things he's expressing, you're identifying, you're picking up on those values, and you're putting it towards a different situation, towards a different perspective. When we're talking about the objective nature of art, we're not saying this story is only about this specific thing he's thinking about. What I'm saying is that his values and how he perceives the world and the emotions that he has and how those things are changed are present within the artwork, and that those things are communicated, sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly, through the artwork. What you're doing is picking up on some of those things, and it spoke to you, and you felt it, and perhaps even gave you a better understanding of your own reality through the values that were shared from a similar situation. That's not a subjective interpretation so much as that is, these values were present in the art. You discovered them through the art, and it was something that you were able to connect with, because those values were true values that you felt, and they connected with you because the truth rang in you in that moment.
So that could be true. That there could be some values underlying, and I'm sure there were underlying Kafka's work that spoke to me, and perhaps I empathize with because perhaps of things that I've been through, or perhaps even my own values. But I don't know if they all were. I very well could have perhaps read in certain values that Franz Kafka didn't intend or didn't mean, or perhaps I missed some that he actually meant to include in his work and substituted them with my own. Right?
It's all possible, but again, that wouldn't.
Right, but I think this is kind of the subject. This is kind of where the this is where I think the subjective nature comes in, right? So, I could miss some values. Well, perhaps let's say I missed 10% of the values that he was trying to get across in the Metamorphosis, and I substitute that with 10% of my own. But as long as the artwork is being used for my purposes here, which is helping me self-reflect and get to this part of my life, then we're all good. Well, what if it's 50% of the values? What if I've reinterpreted 50%? What if it's 75%? What if I get to the point where I read that story and I completely miss all of what Franz Kafka felt when he was writing that story, but the story is still helpful to me. It still helps me reflect on some different thing happening in my life, and still serves the purpose that artwork is supposed to serve.
Okay, so here we go. Let's change it from art, and let's change it to a TED Talk, right? So you watch a TED Talk, and 90% of it you understand and you internalize, and 10% you misinterpret. But you are served a functional perspective by the 90% true things, and the 10% that you got kind of wrong or you misinterpreted, you did so in a way that helped you functionally better in life. It doesn't matter that your recollection of the TED Talk is only 90% accurate, right? That's still an A. If you were in school and you took a test on do you remember everything, it would still be an A, right? You got 90% right. You could do this with anything within reality, where you misinterpret it, but you misinterpret it in a way that is helpful to you. That's not what matters. What matters is there a specific thing that is taught in the TED Talk? And your interpretation of the TED Talk doesn't change reality. It doesn't change whether or not the TED Talk said specific things that you can record and you can say, this is what they said at this timestamp. This is what they meant, and this is the message they were trying to convey. Even if it's helpful to you, even if you kind of create your own little fantasy narrative a little bit about what was said, right? Because to fill in the 10% you kind of got wrong, none of that changes the fact that the TED Talk had an objective reality about what was said, what was stated, and what the purpose of the TED Talk was when the person gave the TED Talk. Art is the same way. It's just harder to interpret.
So
it's not as easy to
let me talk on the TED Talk specifically.
Everything.
So on the TED Talk specifically, I think it depends if the TED Talk is going to be on objective reality or values. And I think this is maybe one of the things that we have a disagreement on. I think values or moral statements are prescriptive, and there is there's no objective reality of what should be. There's only a objective reality of what is now. So when I'm holding a rock, this rock exists, and I can prove this rock exists, and there's mathematical truth about the rock existing. A equals A, right? But should I throw the rock at that guy? Well, it depends. It very much depends on a number of host of factors, on my values, how much I value this person. Maybe I very much dislike them and I really want to hit him in the head with a rock. And that's going to be a whole line of questioning that really doesn't have an objective answer. So if we're at a TED Talk, and it's a TED Talk about mathematical formulas, about how the laws of physics or how the world is, I would agree with you that there is a truth there that if you were to reinterpret it, you would no longer... what you're reinterpreting it for would be inaccurate, in that whatever you're trying to use physics for would probably fail, right? If you're trying to build a plane off reinterpreting a TED Talk about building a plane, you're probably going to build a plane that crashes. But if the TED Talk, real quick, if the TED Talk is putting forward values or prescriptive statements, and you reinterpret that, actually, that's a good point, that makes me think of this. Maybe I should do that, even though that is different than the TED Talk. I don't have a problem with that. There's no issue with that.
Yeah, no, you're wrong. You're wrong, right? So like if I make a piece of art, right? Very, very simple piece of art, and it's like just like a poster board, and it says throw this rock. And it's got a rock tape to it, right? And my desire was the hopes that someone at this art show would go, fuck it, and grab the rock off the wall and throw it at somebody, right? Whether or not, just because there's a prescriptive thing communicated there, one ought throw this rock. It doesn't change the objective reality that I made this art with the intention that someone would throw this rock. Even if 99% of the people that went into the art show was like, oh, this is actually a piece about the temptation and our intrusive thoughts, and how sometimes our intrusive thoughts, can lead to certain things. And like that guy that took the tape off the wall was crazy when he did that. 99% of people can misinterpret it. It doesn't matter. What is objective is that I desired for you to throw the rock. I made art that told you to throw the rock, and it was there with the desire to do that. And what's even a layer beyond that is why. What is it about the way that I view the world that made me do it? Why is it that I thought that simplistic commands were the way to do this? Why is it that I wanted someone to throw the rock? Is there some desire for chaos? We don't.
How can I throw the rock in
necessarily
this
be able to
conversation?
interpret
That's what I
those
wanna know.
things.
Right, this is actually.
How do I throw the rock to end this conversation?
There's
What
a
rock
fact-
do I
Wait, hold on.
Move on to the
This
next
is
one.
this
It
is
doesn't
actually.
change. It doesn't change. Very quickly,
I have that
I'll
rock.
reinterpret it very quickly. If
You
someone
got it?
says you
Help
ought
me out
do
here.
X, it doesn't matter whether or not you ought do X is something you agree with or disagree with, for it to objectively be the thing they are attempting to communicate, or that they are communicating through creation. A equals A. They said
Sure.
you ought do X, and they
But
meant
then it was
but
misinterpreted by
there's
the
a second
people, so
layer.
it was miscommunicated.
I'm not even
Then
sure it's
it doesn't
necessarily
matter.
it does not necessarily miscommunicated. I think this is where the disconnect is,
Misinterpreted.
right? Yeah, if you go and you see the rock with with tape on it that says "throw me," that doesn't speak to the truth of rock thrown, because no, all it speaks to is perhaps the artist was intending for you to pick up the rock and throw it. I, as a free man, can completely ignore anyone's intentions of what they want their product to be used for. If you make Viagra to make dicks hard, but then I use it to reduce Alzheimer's because I want to, that's my decision. I don't give a fuck if you intended or didn't intend for that to be used that way or be interpreted that way. I actually think that looking at the rock and having it speak to
that
you
doesn't
as
make
sort
art
of
subjective.
I think it does, because you're looking at the rock that has the tape "throw me," and I'm
Does
looking
A
at that.
equal A? Does A equal
Yeah,
A?
yeah,
You
of course.
agreed.
Yeah,
A
that's
equals A. So
yes,
if
mathematical
someone
reality.
is attempting, if
The
someone is attempting
art-
to communicate A, and those are the values, and that's the way they see the world, and they put those things into that art, did they or did they not have those values?
Why
present
should I
those
listen to
values,
them?
and
That
put them
doesn't
into the art?
matter.
It's
That
not
doesn't
about whether or not
matter.
you should listen to them.
It's
It's
but it
about
doesn't
does
matter.
A equal A?
Yeah, I think
A
you guys
equals
aren't.
Only if you know that
Yeah.
A equals A, but if you don't know and it's
Yeah,
interpretation,
but
which
that's two
most
different
art is
questions.
open to,
Guys.
then you don't know. Just like
Guys,
they have,
guys, but it's two different questions. It's two different questions, right? He's
No.
saying that, and if I'm misinterpreting you, possibly,
No.
but that, he's saying there's an objective goal with
There's
this
an
art,
intention,
right?
yeah.
Even if, maybe the artist doesn't fully understand it, that there is an objective goal of the art.
Yes.
But then,
Yeah.
later on,
Who
you
they
guys
are is present.
are arguing about, your subjective interpretation of this thing. Yes, right? But those are two different questions, right?
See, here's the problem. Let me clarify. I'll be very clear. Here's the problem. We have this sickness of bad philosophy in Western society where we have brought art into the realm of the spiritual. We have brought art into the realm of the spirit, into mystical thinking. We have brought art into this magical thing because it conveys things that are difficult to convey, because it's difficult to understand, because art is used in a way that language isn't, because language is as clear-cut as possible to get your meaning, and art takes liberties with language. Art takes liberties with these things to describe things at the bounds of our ability to do things. When you talk about this from the ways that humans conceptualize the world, we have scientific. But you can't use science. You can't make someone understand science without reverting to linguistics. You have to go to the narrative. You have to tell a beginning and an end story in order for people to understand what data you found in the laboratory, because random data makes no sense. It might as well be computer binary to someone that doesn't understand computers binary. And often there are things that are communicated with symbols because we have difficulty putting those things into words. And what has happened is that difficulty of interpretation has, due to our poor philosophy and understanding of how art comes to be, has become a mystical, magical thing. And it's not. You can interpret it as you wish, but sometimes you're just wrong in your interpretation. That doesn't mean that you're wrong in the way that thing makes you feel or what that thing reminds you of or what you want it to mean.
Yeah.
Scott, you're saying that we're wrong in the sense that like we can be wrong about what perhaps we think the author intended it to mean. But I still I want the answer to the question: why should I give a fuck what the author intended to mean if I look at it and I decide that it serves my purposes to view it entirely differently?
Because symbols are communicating language. You could maybe call them propagandistic, if you will. It doesn't matter. They're communicating something.
They can. I can also ignore them though.
Right. Just because your interpretation is one thing. If everyone in the world valued, let's say, communist, was like Jordan Peterson and really valued like USSR, paintings, and said, well, I see something different, as Jordan Peterson does, right? He says, I see something different in this. And therefore he popularizes this art that is without a doubt evil art. It is intended to communicate workers fighting against the bourgeoisie, and it is intended to communicate the destruction of capitalism. And then he popularizes it because he doesn't understand the importance of recognizing that this art has an objection, that it has values present in it. And then we all become popular. You could very easily make something popular that is communicating through symbol an idea that we don't necessarily want to be popular. We don't want everyone to feel and interpret. We don't want a massive popularity boost of USSR propaganda posters everywhere in America, especially if
just because you and I
just feels like you're
because you and I agree. Yeah,
I mean, because there are types of abstract art that are just like 2 or 3 colors or gradient of colors on a fucking canvas, right? And these are meant to evoke something in people, evoke a feeling. I don't know how you can say that this is communicating any kind of ideology or anything about the person themselves, other than they're trying to make you think about how these colors make you feel, or about how these black lines on this otherwise empty canvas make you feel. Like that, I don't.
Most of that art is fraudulent, to be fair.
What does that mean? What do you mean it's fraudulent?
I mean that it is. You have
tax
a market
sheltering.
Yeah. You have a market of artists that are all trying to be more avant-garde than the other person, and what they're communicating in that art is that value. They're communicating this concept that there hasn't been avant-garde in Western art in the popular circles that is highly valued since fucking, oh God, what is that Campbell's soup can fucking.
Oh yeah. Warhol
and Warhol.
Warhol and
I don't think
there's
that's
this
true.
idea that there's this is subversive art, and it's some woman shoving spaghetti into her vagina.
Okay, but now you're misinterpreting what I said. You're mischaracterizing what I said. I'm not talking about a woman shoving spaghetti in her ass or something. I said specifically black lines on a canvas, or just 2 or 3 different gradients of a color, right? Or just something that looks like paint splotches.
I am arguing
something that looks like paint splotches or something, right? When artists put this out, it's typically, and I understand a lot of this. There's nothing. It's very difficult to connect with this for some people, right? And for a lot of it, it's very difficult for me to connect with it. But typically, when these artists put this out, it's not because they're trying to impose an ideology on you or because they're trying to communicate their ideology. What they're attempting to have you do is look at what they've created, and then think about how it makes you feel. Think about what you see there, etc. And everybody might come away with some different thing, right? So it actually might be a way to it might be like a mirror of some sort, right? So it's a way to get people to think about themselves and to think about how they're feeling about this thing and how it's different from the way it's making.
You know what you're doing right now? You're describing
I'm
the
talking.
values of the artist they put into the art piece that
How?
they made. That
Scott,
are
you're literally
present in
reinterpreting what he just said. Like this
Holy
is the
Christ.
value of art right here, subjective.
But
No,
how?
it's like you're not arguing against it because you how what do you mean how you just
He's
described
projecting
it. You
meaning
said
onto Doobie's
these are the
argument.
values
And
these
we're
are the
back to
values that a
projecting.
person has. They have a
Come full
desire
circle.
in
What is
making this
projection?
to create
Projection. That's what we got.
What is
started
the
with.
What is
value? Okay,
projection?
wait, hold on.
That's
So
what
it's
we
a value.
started
It's a value trying to get people to think about the art piece, about the thing that they created.
So I mean
is that
that's
the value?
there's going to be other values present, obviously, right? Because the totality, the argument is this. I've made the argument several times. I don't know why people aren't just engaging with the argument itself. It's the
Because it's a
same
dumb
argument that Ayn Rand made. It's not dumb.
It was stupid when she said it. It's dumb now. Like I hate to break it to you. That's why we're not engaging.
Ayn Rand isn't a
losing.
guy.
I'm losing brain cells every time we sit here.
No,
and
Ayn
someone
Rand's
says
a
art
female.
can't be subjective.
What?
Like, bro, like I can sit here and post up an art. Like it's literally. We're not gonna go. This. I'm
An
done.
unironic male
I'm
chauvinist
saying.
female.
It's just,
Oh.
I feel like I'm losing brain cells the longer this goes on because it's just.
Well, I-
it's
wait,
the
I
same
just-
conversation. in a
Yeah, I
circle.
understand that it's
Yeah.
difficult for you to
Yeah.
grasp.
No,
the
it's really
basic
stupid.
philosophy.
Yeah,
I
that's
get, no,
Well,
we're gonna
I
cut
get
off.
it.
We're gonna
I
cut
was
off the
warming my
complaint.
point.
We're gonna cut off the complaint. No, don't worry. No. We're gonna actually get through everyone. Don't worry. No, absolutely, it's gonna happen. Doobie jumped the line, but Doobie never talked.
Just
so I
really
wanna
quickly.
hear what Doobie has to say here, and then we're gonna go to Ali. Then we're gonna go to Fairy Queen, and we're gonna go to Aiko. All right.
Yeah, well, I just have one more thing to add because I think the way that I look at a lot of this kind of abstract art, right? Like one of the ones, the one that I just put us in the group chat, and I'm sure I could find others
Right.
close for you, is it's sort of like a Rorschach test, right? They're like colorful Rorschach tests that these artists are putting out, and that's kind of the intention, right? So everybody's going to see something a little bit different, and that's the goal is to get you to think about how it makes you feel and what you see and how it's different from what other people see and why you might feel that way, why it might be different. Right, so I don't think they're imposing values upon people or expressing values other than if the value is to try to get you to be a little introspective. I guess that's a value, but I don't know why
It's not
we
about whether it's not about the fact that art must impose a value on you, right? It's what I'm saying is very simple, and everyone is jumping to their ability to analyze and interpret. What I'm saying is that when a piece of art is created, it is human beings are conceptual beings. They use the mind to see reality. And those things aren't necessarily always one-to-one perfect. Human beings have thoughts and feelings and biases and opinions. And those things change the way that we view the world because we have different values, etc. And when we make art, our values are present in the art because we're bringing concepts into the world. You might say, well, art A is intended to be whimsical or quizzical. It's intended to be interpreted differently by different people. Therefore, it's not objective. It's subjective because the intent behind the art is for people to walk away with different feelings. What I'm saying is the intent is there to create a process, to create a conversation, but also how they chose to represent that intent and how they felt in creating that is present there. Now, obviously, some things are really hard to interpret and understand and view how they do those things, and some things aren't so much.
Okay.
That doesn't change whether or not
This
the
is the
artist
most like
I got-
machismo, charismo, like a line of reasoning I've ever heard. Like
I
not
gotta
everything's gotta have a reasoning.
I gotta
like,
move on. I gotta move on to Ali instead of FQ and then Aiko. All right.
Oh yeah, I agree with Scott. Well, holy shit, this game. I agree with Scott, but the artist can have whatever objective he wants, whatever intent he wants, whatever. I'm just saying, at the end of it, unless you know the artist, unless you read what the intent, it doesn't matter. It's all up to interpretation. But like, main point was like the dude that invented the GIFs. It's supposed to be called GIF. And I don't think a literal
We all
human
just
on
call it GIF.
yeah, everyone just calls it a GIF. So then, is it a GIF or is it GIF? Doesn't matter what he wanted it to be called. Doesn't matter. He's the one who created it. He's the one who named it. Yada yada yada.
We can call
and
it
just to
whatever we
move,
want.
yeah, and just to move on. You know, there is a movie about Corey and Fairy Queen in a cop buddy drama. It is called Zootopia. She is the rabbit.
It's a
He is
great
the
movie.
fox.
It's a fantastic movie.
Wait,
He
I'm
is
the
not the
rabbit or
fox.
he's
Fuck
the
out of
rabbit?
here, sociologically. The
No.
fox is the hero of Zootopia, right?
Yeah. And did you see how Fairy Queen wanted to
The bunny
punish
is evil.
all
The bunny is
yes,
evil.
and Fairy Queen was clearly the evil one in that dynamic.
The fox, all right, and it's called
Okay, I
Gideon
can
Gray.
take it.
All right, Gideon
Can
Gray
beat me.
is a fucking hero. I have toddlers for children, if you can't tell. Gideon Gray is a fucking hero. All right, and the bunny is evil. Fuck out of here.
Yes.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah. Just trying to move it on to Zootopia, you know.
Fair,
I'm not
fair
sure
enough.
if I'm a vixen or a rabbit. I wasn't able to figure out from the diatribe
You were
just
the
now.
rabbit.
I'm the
Uh,
rabbit.
The rabbit was the cop, and
bunny.
the cop wanted to
Ah,
arrest everybody.
Well, I'm gonna
And
bound my way out into the next part of this conversation. So Scott, like I agree with you that I do think that there are some objective lines to art, but one of the things that I really disagree with you, like pretty fundamentally, is the idea that like the point of art is to, and this is actually a reason why I don't like a lot of Ayn Rand's writings, is that the purpose of art is to show man at his best, right? It's to show, you know, the heroic ideal, right? Like there's a portion of like there's the character Dominique, like in the Fountainhead, where she like is so upset, you know, at the idea that like, you know, that the ideal can't really exist in the real world. And so she takes, you know, this beautiful marble statue and she hurls it down the chute and crashes it, right? And that's why she and Howard Rourke have this back and forth, right? And I get I understand why you're saying this. That's a very Randian thing. But there are many examples of pieces of art that are classic works of art that have been historically revered that do not show mankind at his best, that do not try to show a heroic ideal, that do indulge in madness, in chaos, in fear, that try to show the best of people, not like at their intellectual heights or like because they created or had great achievements, but it's because it shows an intimacy and a vulnerability and their humanity. Like the painting of the Scream, for instance, like that's not a painting I would think of that shows the heroic ideal in art, but it's absolutely a piece of art and it's a classic work of art.
You're arguing against the concept that all art is the heroic ideal of man.
No, I'm arguing against the concept that good art has to be the heroic ideal. That's what I'm arguing against.
Well, I didn't make that argument per se. I made the argument that some art is evil by expressing values that I believe to be evil, such as anti-greed, pro-altruism, anti-liberty, anti-individualism. Those are evil pieces of artwork that express evil ideas. Now, what I'm saying, and you can disagree with that, but that's a philosophical disagreement about what you think is morally good or morally perspective. But I'm not making an argument that like all art must be about, in order to be good art, must be about the heroic individual, that it must be, you know, the statue of Ted Haggard, right? Like it doesn't need to necessarily be that to be good art. And what is good art is certainly going to be a difficult thing to perfectly analyze, right? I'm simply saying I'm saying art is bad art when it communicates bad ideas. But the idea of like expressing human vulnerability as something that we ought understand, that's not bad. Like that's
what I was doing with the
reality.
lights over here. I was expressing human vulnerability.
Oh, okay. Well, but like what I'm saying is like I agree with you, right? It's not bad. I don't think it's bad to express human vulnerability or to explore messier, you know, complicated aspects of our nature or to
I think that's
analyze.
part of the art. Like I said,
I think that it is,
reality.
but it also, and I know you don't think it's a contradiction. I think that it is in contradiction. That's one of the reasons I never really liked reading Ayn Rand, was the idea that, you know, there's this ego, there's this ideal that we all have to reach towards. And that's what and to a certain degree, that's true, but it really cuts out a lot of human emotion and a lot of what makes art meaningful. And it's often not that you're looking at this perfect, you know, specimen, you know, on the page or like on the canvas.
You're doing exactly what I accuse you of doing. You're bringing art into the realm of mysticism. You're making it magical.
I am.
It's not.
But I think that what makes part of like
I don't
what
engage
makes
in
art
mysticism. It's anti-reality. It's nonsense. Just like I don't engage with talking about the reality of God.
Angel,
well,
I don't.
And Rod's an idiot. So
hang on. Well, hang on. If I may, just one more before the other people go. I am an atheist. You know, I am not, you know, religious. I don't believe that angels are real either. But I will tell you that even though I logically acknowledge this and I know this, there is a great deal of beauty in going and experiencing spirituality and having and feeling like you're having a spiritual experience when you go into the woods, when you go to a garden, when you go to the museum, when you pick up a book, there is, and the idea that I could understand it, or that there's something about it that if I just was smart enough or just had the right tools available to me, it detracts away from my enjoyment of the art. The idea that it's something that's sort of beyond me, that you can't quite touch.
You pretend like reality doesn't exist so that you can enjoy an anti-reality stance, which is part of your destructive philosophy. Come back to reality. Know that some things you don't understand. It's okay that you don't understand.
You're objectively evil, not even
subjectively.
It's
okay that you can be in awe. It's okay to be in awe of something so unknowable in its current situation towards your current capacity and intellect, and to be okay with awing that and realizing that there are values present that you can't necessarily make manifest with words. That's beautiful. That's amazing. But to say that we ought deny the concept that is eventually knowable is to be anti-reality.
I'm not denying. Okay, thinker. I'm not denying that there are some aspects of reality that we don't know that could be knowable. That's not what I'm saying, okay? What I'm saying is the fact that it isn't knowable, that there is some mystery to it, adds a level of beauty and grace. I don't know if that's true. That's actually something I really don't agree with. It's actually a problem that I have, which is that the mind ultimately of another person is not knowable, right? Like that we all are housed in our, our flesh casements of our prisons of our brain,
Human
right? You can't really.
If something is real, right? If something exists in the world, existence exists. It is knowable.
No, there are some aspects of existence that even if I have.
That doesn't mean.
Do you think that I have an
technology or knowledge to do so?
I'm going to quote Goodwill Hunting. Do you think I have an inkling of what your life has been, what it feels like to be you, to walk through your experiences? Is that something I can ever truly know? Even if you sit down and tell me everything that's happened to me, you have a video, you have pictures. Can I really know that?
FQ, he's like science fiction, right? Like maybe there's another technology that actually lets you live his life, right? And then
I understand,
I'll go a step further. If God exists, one of two things happen. Either A, he doesn't exist, or B, in order for him to affect the world in any way, shape, or form, to make miracles, to do all of the things he supposedly did, he must come into contact with an existence that is measurable and knowable. And one day we will have the capacity to imprison God for his crimes.
Okay,
That's
well, to quote you from a couple of weeks ago, you're not answering anything that I just asked, okay? And I just asked you very bluntly, okay? You said that, like, everything is knowable. You can know just if you just had the right tools, just had the right things.
You can know all of those things.
And no, I don't. I don't have any idea what your life is like. You do not have any idea what my life is like. I don't have any idea what any of
them. I said
I'm saying it's unknown
phenomena.
No, to you because you've experienced it.
You cannot name a phenomena that exists in reality that is also impossible to know of.
It's not that it's impossible. It's not that it's not impossible to know. It's just that certain individuals and certain life experiences are unknowable to us because we are individuals with our own individual life experiences and identities. Okay, but I can never understand.
Let me change the word. I'm going to change the word from knowable to discoverable. Does that help you understand what I'm saying? It is something that you could discover if you had the technology and the means to do so. And if it's not possible to ever be discovered, then that means that it doesn't exist.
Well, how do you know that?
Am I going to have to bring in quantum mechanics and dual?
Because existence exists.
A lot of
quantum mechanics is trash. Quantum theory is fucking trash.
Hold on, isn't like the universe expanding faster than the speed of light or whatever? So we're not going to find.
We don't understand certain premises. That's it. We don't understand certain premises, so we just guess that it's that two things can be true in reality.
Interestingly, the word exists comes from the two Greek words ek plus histome, which literally means to stand out or to stand outwards. So if something exists, it stands out to you. So if you're not aware of it, then it doesn't exist. Like by the root definitions of the word.
That's ridiculous, though, right?
That's how we come up with it, though.
We might not know it. We might know it, and we might not ever.
Outside of our ability to detect it, then it doesn't exist.
I didn't say that. I mean, that's a bizarre. I think it's a bizarre statement.
That's the same thing. That's the same thing as saying, "Oh, you use the word fetus. Well, do you know that the etymology of the fetus just means baby?"
No. What I'm saying is your usage of the word corresponds with that etymological root. I'm not saying that that's the only legitimate way to define the word. We all know there's many different ways to define words. I'm just saying that yours corresponds with that. You literally just said that if something is beyond our ability to detect it, then it does not exist.
Facts.
That's because existence itself is linked, at least in a lot of people's understanding of the word, to the ability to detect something. And if you can't detect it, then, as you said, it must not exist.
I must be missing something. If a planet with life on it is moving away from Earth faster than the speed of light, so we'll never be able to reach it, does that planet not exist?
Based on the definition that Scott was assuming when he made that statement, yeah, it does not exist.
No, that's not.
So
no.
iCow is
That's
providing
your
a critique of
reinterpretation
Scott.
of my thing. It exists in the material world. It exists. Existence exists.
Right, it exists, but we'll never know it.
It's the observer doesn't create existence.
Okay,
it's
I
not.
agree.
It's that. But it can be observed. Is different than the observer creating it.
Yeah, like
right?
just because we aren't the observer doesn't mean
It's
that
not
like
Schrodinger's fucking cat.
Okay,
that, like,
good.
You have to open the box to know whether or not the cat is alive.
There can
or
be
dead.
other
Cat is
observers.
alive or dead.
Aiko, so you wanted to say something previously, so go ahead, and then we'll go back to it, and then we can move on to the next topic.
Yeah, well, I just wanted, maybe this would end it like on a sort of a note of like a bridge between these two positions, because like back when I was in college, when I was taking English classes, like I was trained in something called new criticism, but not new criticism as it exists today, which is now known as new criticism, but old new criticism, which was as it existed about 100 years ago. Fairy Queen probably knows what I'm talking about. And in old new criticism, the idea was that of the trinity of ways of interpreting, right, which is the audience, the text, that's something we haven't been talking about. We've been talking about the audience and the author, but we haven't really talked about the text. That's the third one. In old new criticism, it was really the only method of criticism that said you have to pay attention to all three. And it's interesting that it came around about 100 years ago, because also around that time there was a very popular series of books about somebody named Sherlock Holmes. And when the author killed him off, he and his nemesis jumped off the Reichenbach Falls, struggling with each other, the audience did not want to accept that Sherlock Holmes was dead. They wore black armbands. They mourned the character. It was amazing. And he swore, no, he's dead. That's it. He's not coming back. And for years he did, right? But then the author, I guess he got hungry. He decided he was he wasn't able. People didn't buy any of his books outside of Holmes. So as a response to all of that fan pressure and all of that added interpretation that came from the audience, sure enough, he was wrong. His audience was right. Sherlock was alive, and in the future stories, you find out how he survived that fall. So that's an example of a death of the author, right? Of the audience sort of taking over. But what's interesting about old new criticism was that we still don't say that the author is irrelevant to this. It's important to understand the author's state of mind to the extent that you can. It's important to understand what the words in the text themselves mean. You have to pay attention to all three of these things. And so what Scott is saying is valid. What Lactoid is saying is valid. I think that you have to look at all of those, that method of interpretation. Choose Your Own Adventure books are specifically stories in which the audience is supposed to be part of the canonical decision maker that decides what happened in that story. There are lots of these things. If you look at Marvel comic books, for instance, there have been multiple story runners in there that say, if you were to look at every single thing that Spider-Man has gone through, it would be impossible for all of those things to exist canonically. They would contradict each other too much. What you're supposed to do is take all of the ones that you've read, and in your head canon, that's the canon that's happened. And you've probably read maybe a tenth of what's available there.
If you're average,
right? So everyone has their own, So there's a parallel universe in every single comic book reader's head of all of the things that have happened, or you might not be aware of 80% of what's happened, in that character's sort of backstory. And so all of those sort of problems of contradiction or too much stuff. Spider-Man has met both President Nixon and President Obama. Okay, and he was
still in his 20s. Yeah.
Within a couple of years. Yeah, exactly. So there's some real big problems there if you try to stitch everything together. But everyone in their own head has sort of a way of cobbling those things together, and that's how the author and the text and the audience all participate to this sort of ball of meaning that that is not the same. Like as Heraclitus says, you cannot step in the same river twice.
It's nonsense.
Yeah.
First of all, canon exists.
Gobbledygook. I can.
And when canon becomes contradictory, specifically in the Spider-Man universe, they just go, "Oh fuck, there's a multiverse, and different runs are different portions, and they're different, and they have their own canon."
That's more DC.
That's one of many ways to
Spider-Man is one of the things they resolve those because contradictions cannot exist in reality.
That was
and
DC.
This idea
DC
that
did that.
oh well, you just kind of have your own head canon, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Spider-Man does have the whole Spider-Verse, so
no. DC is the one.
There's different comic runs, and those different comic runs have their own canon, and when you do that, they're different runs.
What about when the reverse happens? So this happens at 40K a lot. So this is a big thing that happens is they'll go and so they'll put out the novel series, right? Like the Horus Heresy just finished, right? And they brought back multiple plot threads, and they're called plot hooks, right? And so what happens is they go and look and see which plot hooks are getting the most fan excitement, right? So right now the Star Child is coming back in canon. Now the Star Child's been old retcon lore for 20, 30 years, right? But since they left the plot hook in their newest stuff, it's generated a lot of interest, and people are going more towards that than another storyline that they have left a plot hook in there, right? So they'll go and they see, and then what'll happen is they'll go and look at the fan theories, and they will literally take those fan theories and make them canon. So the whole argument that it can't be subjective is it's just fake, because they could go and literally go and look and see, well, we left multiple options, and these people took one, and this one took it and made it better than what we had. We're definitely going to take that version and go. So at that point, everything you said falls on its head.
I'm not sure if it does.
How do you figure it doesn't fall on its head? It absolutely does.
I've wasted enough time trying to describe basic philosophy to you guys. This is getting tiresome.
Drew
Karpyshyn writes a book. Okay, whether or not that's canon in the expanded universe of Star Wars or not doesn't matter. Right? Yes, Disney as a corporation gets to choose what's canon and what's not.
Dragon Ball GT, not canon.
My only argument is that when Drew Karpyshyn writes a book, that his values are present within the book, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, and that the way that he sees the world is made manifest by the way that he writes literature, and that you don't get to change whether or not those values and those things are true or not true. If you want to feel different things or interpret different things of your own personal
Fungus Bugs Bunny
into them,
canon
that's
too.
fine.
Yeah. Okay, so let's Aiko, if you have anything else you want to add, and then we'll add to it your final word on this, and then
I'm gonna go pee.
No, that was it. I'm good.
Did you have you're very timidly raising your hand? So okay, Lactoid, then FQ, and then we can move on to the next topic.
So I actually think that maybe Scott might be more of a purist on this than other people, but I actually sort of think that people are going to tend to take whatever theory happens to be most beneficial to their position at the time. And then pretend it's some kind of principle when it might not necessarily be one. And I just thought of this, and I think this kind of explains what I'm referring to. The Confederate flag has been repeatedly over the last couple of years been taken down from state houses, from public lands. There's been several polls on this, even in 2015, where the majority of Americans, a clear majority of Americans, believe that the Confederate flag just represents Southern pride, right? Nothing racist, not about owning slaves or anything like that. And a minority of Americans believe that it was racist. But whenever you're talking with somebody who's opposed to the Confederate flag, even though the Confederate flag may have taken on a new meaning, right? Dukes of Hazzard, Southern pride, etc. They're going to, even if they believe in death of the author, and even if they believe that the flag, even if they know perhaps the flag is not being used in this way, and they know that the person flying this flag is not meaning it in a racist way, they're still going to make statements like that flag is racist, right? That flag was founded by racist people, and the racism is embedded within it and cannot be, it just can't be pulled out, right? we got to get rid of that flag because of what it represents, right? It represents slavery, despite the fact that more or less that meaning has been lost in American
Well, no, it's
history.
gone the other way
at
now.
least
The poll you're talking about was 2015. There was
2015.
There was a 2020 poll that showed that the majority found that it was racist.
Well, and the
Which I
reason
just
for the
posted
shift,
in
right?
chat.
And what's the reason for the shift, though? The reason for the shift is people pushing that the reinterpretation of this flag is incorrect, and that the actual meaning of the flag, the original intended meaning of the flag here, was racism. Therefore, we should all believe
They're
it's
diving
racism.
into the documents. Yeah.
Right.
The
Exactly.
Confederate
And
battle
so,
flag is evil art. If people choose to believe it means
well,
something
so
else,
Scott, so
collectively, it doesn't matter.
Scott, I think you can actually pretty consistently believe this because it was made from, Confederates who were fighting the Union in order to preserve slavery.
Yeah,
But somebody
Confederate
who
battle
does,
flag is evil art.
right, you say it's
opposes
evil
those
art, right?
values.
But like what I would say perhaps is
Well,
that
not
much
imposes, but
right,
represents.
what I would say, much like a lot of different words or other flags or phrases or art or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, if we get to the point where it's simply not seen this way anymore, even if it was in the past, I don't think there's any problem with it. I think it's more or less lost that meaning, right? If this was 2015 and let's say
I'm
it
not
was
arguing
like,
for banning it.
I'm not saying you
there's
are.
an
I'm not saying you
objective
are.
reality.
Right. And Scott, I'm telling you that you can be consistent on this by saying it's evil art because you believe very strongly, and like the person who makes it like imbues this essence to the art that is like the intent, the expressed intent, and that's the way the art needs to be interpreted. But for me or for some other people, I think that we're not necessarily of
you
that.
don't have to interpret it that way. I'm just saying that is reality. Like you can say that
You're saying if you don't interpret it that way, you're wrong. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I actually agree. You're wrong.
So it has to be interpreted
this way. The fact of the matter is that it has.
You're allowed to be wrong.
No,
saying,
nothing.
But yeah.
I mean, sure,
right?
I guess.
You're allowed to say that like a symbol that like you as a culture or whatever have reclaimed a symbol, and that like that there is because there's all of this other art that is going to be with the Confederate flag, right? I mean, there's an insane amount of art that exists in the South of like redone versions of it, or it's in a picture. There's all kinds of other art, and yeah, there's a discussion around what it means. There is a reality. That means that when an artist created it, that reality is what the reality is.
Right.
But that
that's what I'm saying.
Mean that doesn't mean that like
please,
a whole bunch of people can't adopt something and say that it means something else to them.
They're wrong. You would say they were wrong. I'm saying that they're not necessarily wrong. If, for example, we were in 2015 and somebody asked me, "Hey, the Confederate battle flag, should we take it down?" I would look at the poll and say, "I don't think so. I don't think this means racism. I don't think that's the intent."
You can do this with the swastika. Wasn't the swastika a Buddhist symbol of like peace or whatever it was? And then now if you post a swastika,
well, I mean, you can
wait. This is actually a great counterexample, right? Because the swastika was not intended to mean genocide, but it took on that meaning because of the way it was used after the fact. And so now, if we see the swastika and somebody tries to say, "Well, I'm just going by the original meaning," we're all going to roll our eyes and be very skeptical because we really, the contemporary history here informs how that's being used.
You're welcome.
How it's being used. Thank you.
But again, that's how people are interpreting the usage or why someone might have a swastika.
FQ.
It doesn't speak to the actual reality.
FQ. And then Admiral Gibbs will give you the final word, okay? All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. I had one more thing I wanted to drop in the bucket before we ended this, and that's this: that at least a stake to consider, like when we're talking about objective standards of beauty and art, for me, like in literature and poems, etc. So just to give you an example of like, I know we're currently in a philosophical space. We're talking about what art is. I'm now going to move away and talk about what the impact of this mentality has on people who want to create art. And so when I went to my program for creative writing, I was really excited. And I was excited to go to this program because many of the professors who taught there went to the IWA's Writers Workshop. That was a huge deal for me. And for those of you who don't know, the IWA's Writers Workshop, it is the #1 MFA program for writers in the country. Some of the most renowned artists, literary artists in the United States go to Iowa. They don't go to Harvard. They don't go to Yale. They go to Iowa. That's where they go. So I was very excited. I got in, I was really ready to go. And I would and when I went to these workshops to go and to participate, a lot of the work that we read was really, really bad. A lot of the work was bad. It was difficult to evaluate it. And one of the most frustrating things that would happen, like when you pick up somebody, when somebody hands you their poem or their painting or their novel or their short story, is that when you have the mindset that, well, if art is subjective, right, and it's just my interpretation, your interpretation is yours and my interpretation is mine, and there's not really any objective standard by which to measure it, well, that makes it pretty damn difficult to edit. And it makes it pretty damn difficult for you to give actual constructive advice on how to improve it, because after all, your interpretation is as good as mine, right? And so it practically made workshops very difficult and made improving art or learning how to improve yourself as an artist very difficult when you abandon and scatter any idea of objectivity to the wind. But the second problem was that it was a marketing strategy for these programs to rake in students who couldn't afford to pay for it. There's a wonderful article. It's an online magazine. It's called Electric Literature. For many of these creative writing MFA programs, the only thing that you need to get in is a bachelor's degree, and you need to have a long enough writing sample, and you need to have enough money to pay. And what happens is, so you have these programs, right? And there are tons of people want to be writers. They want to be novelists. They want to be short story writers. They want to be poets, right? So what happens is you have one teacher, right, who has like 30 students, right? They all submit a 15-page double-spaced, short story for the week, right? And so God, right, he has to go through all of these different stories of all of these different people who are in this program, right? Because after all, well, you might think that this person's art sucks, but hey, your interpretation is as good as mine, right? Who are you to say that it sucks? And that's essentially like that. I think that framework is used to take advantage of students and of people who believe that they have artistic desires, who want to go to these programs, but frankly, they are not decent enough at the craft in order to be there. And this is the terminal degree in the field. So one example, we had a student in our program, and this is no shade, he came from Saudi Arabia. He could read and he could write at about a 7th grade reading level, maybe like a 6th or 7th grade reading level. And this was an MFA program. You're not supposed to go on to get your PhD. It's supposed to be the terminal degree of the field. And he was there. And we have strong reason to suspect the reason why he was there was because he was very rich and he paid a lot of money, right? And I think it probably buoyed most of our scholarships for the program was his presence there. And so every week we would get these, I'm sorry, and it's mean to put it this way, but it's not his fault, but badly written stories and badly written poems that were not very good, right? So it was very frustrating for me, and it was frustrating for a couple of the other writers who were there because we wanted to improve. We were there. We wanted meaningful, constructive criticism. We wanted to become better. And, it's very frustrating for you to pour so much effort into your story, into your work, and to see that basically what you've worked on for years is exactly the same as the person who, just scribbled something and came to class like the previous evening. Especially when you can read it and it's not even
about this class. What are we doing?
Yeah, she's just expressing
venting.
She's let her vent.
I'm saying
venting?
I'm saying the subjectivity in interpreting.
I feel like I'm about to go red pill for a moment.
She doesn't like Saudis. She doesn't.
What are you talking about?
I'm saying that when that the excuse of subjectivity, of subjective interpretation of the quality of art is used as a marketing strategy within these programs to rake in tons of cash with little liability. That's what I'm saying. And that's what a stake in this conversation about objectivity in art.
Wait a minute, hold on. FQ, you don't have to explain yourself. Scott just spent an hour plus, right, on this diatribe about
educating you.
Educating us, right? And then FQ decides, hey, I acknowledge all of that, but hey, I just want to express myself, right? This is the experience I had. He's like, why are we doing this? Come on. All right, sure. Moving on. So, all right, we're gonna go to Admiral Gibbs.
I'm ready to cede my time to move to the next topic.
Fair enough. Fair Queen, when you first said the word your program, I thought it was anti-addiction. That's where I thought you were going with that one. But okay.
No!
That's fine. No, it's fine. I support you in all the steps that you
I
took
have no
to
addictions.
where you're at.
Thank
So,
you.
okay.
Okay. I have no addictions whatsoever. It was not a problem I experienced.
Addiction to rage baiting people. I think that might be something you might. Yeah. I got you there.
That might be true. Okay.
Okay.
I am guilty of rage baiting people.
Addiction to 50s greasers specifically.
That's true.
Okay.
That is
Crime.
on
I want
on
that
video.
banned. I want all
I think it's a terminal
Banned.
addiction too. It's pretty
Striking
bad.
for the record.
I want that redacted from all future
Yeah.
panels.
I've
Here in
downloaded the
Forever
vault
Knowledge.
already.
Scott, I would maybe like to engage with you on this topic at some other point in time. I'll write it down. Because I think my objection is different from what a lot of the people were having here with your thoughts there. And maybe it's not too much of an objection, but it's something I'd like to work out with you. And I think I'm much closer to the Fairy Queen's point of view in all this. But I think our angle of attack is different. But yeah, I'll write it down.
It's fine. You're both wrong. I got you. Whenever you need help.
Okay. All right. Thanks, friend. Moving on with our lives. Oh God. So anyway,
Shake your head like I'm not here to be the asshole. Like, come on.
I'm not.
Everybody knows.
You don't have to
that's why I'm
be.
here.
Nobody has to be the asshole, okay? We could just be nice to each other. That is an option that exists,
Sometimes you people need a fucking asshole.
That's like, I mean, that's an opinion. That's
I
not
think
evil
I'm gonna
art.
leave that alone.
That's not evil art.
Lots of things to do with that, but we're gonna move on.
I got you.
But yeah, hello, all. This is our round table. 8 p.m. On Mondays. We've got a great group of guests here. I want to state that we ended with the essential existence, the essential nature of art. But we began with Corey's desire to talk about smut. Just want to put that out there. That was the art.
And you just wanted to ask a simple question to iCal that's never answered.
What was the question?
Yeah, exactly. I don't even remember.
It's okay. We don't have to do this. But the point is, I like how I really actually enjoyed these conversations and these arcs that we have. They're a lot of fun, right? You all get passionate about it, and everyone responded here, right? I didn't think Doobie would jump in on this one. I really wanted to shift the subject to bring in my man Doobie, but he jumped in and he was like, "Hey, fuck you, Scott," right? And we love that. We all love that. So thanks to you all for that much. And out there, if you enjoy all of this, well, consider supporting the channel. Sub to the channel, gift bits or gift subs, all very important. Keeps this powered. So consider supporting us that way. If you want us to react to something that you have to say, right? Consider super chats on YouTube. I guess you can also attach bits to your comments in Twitch, and we'll respond there. I mean, if it's $2, right? Don't give me your pocket change, okay? All right. But then we'll respond to that. So consider supporting the channel in all the ways. So if you value this, right? You value art, this is its own kind of art, really, if you think about it, right? Evil art, maybe. If you think about it, if you support an artist, supporting the channel.
I'm not here.
Let's go to our next topic. All right, and the one you probably clicked on the stream for. Sorry. Over the weekend, Iran launched an aerial assault against Israel. This came in the form of hundreds of drones sent across vast distances. 99% of the drones were shot down by both the IDF and U.S. military, and apparently UK and apparently Jordanian, I'm hearing as well. The attack was in response to the Israelis bombing the Iranian diplomatic compound in Damascus. Iran has said that they consider this incident is at an end. However, they will respond forcefully if Israel strikes back again. Now, the Biden administration is urging restraint from the Netanyahu administration. Was the Iranian attack justified? Should Israel strike back? What role should Americans play in all of this, if any? Is this more evidence that the American alliance with Israel makes us less safe? Yeah. So, I mean, the big news. I don't have to explain much to you all, but this is a thing that happened. It was like an army of drones, that like a condor, like flying across these miles, and there was a plenty of forewarning from Iran that this was coming, and then they gave plenty of time for Israel and their allies to shoot down all these drones. But again, this was in retaliation from a previous strike. And now there's a lot of anxiety of this being like, well, the second step to get us to a wider regional war. And there is desire on both sides to avoid it, and a desire on both sides to embrace it. So I'm just curious, like, where you all stand on that, and we'll go from there. Lactoid.
Yeah, I think that now that the attacks come and it was widely ineffective, which is good. I don't think that any further action in terms of a direct military intervention by Israel and Iran would be justified. And I mean justified in the sense of like it shouldn't be done for a wide variety of practical reasons. I mean that's pretty much I think the kind of the meat of the point. Israel should not do anything back to Iran at this stage. The Iranian attack being justified, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, whether or not it's justified, no. You can say that Iran's a bad regime and therefore aggressive acts to destabilize it are justified and it retaliating are unjustified. It's pretty obvious why they felt it's justified, given the fact that they did one of their military assets in Syria was attacked by Israel. So I think they've satiated their sort of need to be seen as a power. Like, hey, we did what we had to do. You attacked a sovereign nation, and we retaliated. But the retaliation was pretty pathetic in that it was completely nullified. And I think that's a win in of itself. And Israel should just take that win and move on. I mean, why expand it?
Although I think Iran denies being in Syria, so it's funny that this is a retaliation for an attack on people who were not there.
Interesting. Well, same thing happened to the U.S. when we had that base. Was it in Syria or something that we all just found out after?
Yeah, it was attack. In Syria.
Yeah.
We kicked their ass though. The Wagner group. Yeah, we just obliterated them.
Yeah. Let's go America. Go team. Scott, please.
Yeah. I find every time I have to talk about Israel Palestine, I always find it very interesting because to me it's kind of like what happened right after 9/11, which is like 9/11 occurred and then like a bunch of Americans were like, we're bombing people in the Middle East. We had no idea, right? And so now that like October 7th has occurred, like all of these people now all of a sudden have opinions on like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and it's like, dog, this has been happening for like 70 fucking years. Now, so yes, there is an escalation here in the sense that Iran claimed, they responded directly, which usually they go through their proxies, Hezbollah, or other groups, or they kind of do things covertly, or the Houthis, right? Like where they're funding and they're providing weaponry to groups that but they're not usually taking credit for it. So yes, this is somewhat of an escalation. The current news, right? I'm just checking now. We still haven't gotten the response from War Council in Israel, though there's some insider sources saying that Israel's going to retaliate, but they're going to kind of do the same thing that the Iranians did, right? Which is, the Iranians couldn't not retaliate; they had to retaliate, but they did so in an intentionally like nothing happened, right? And then they put out a statement and they were like, America need not involve itself. And we had every right to do this based off Article 15, the UN Charter, right? So what it appears to be, and it's hard to know with any of these things, appears to be kind of an intentional escalation, where I think what Iran is trying to do is, if there is any over long-term goal, is they're trying to basically push public opinion enough to get the U.S. to be like, all right, we're not getting ourselves involved. And if they can get the U.S. to be like, fuck this, it's an election year, we don't want to be a part of this kind of thing, then they can potentially like further escalate the war against Israel without having to worry about U.S. involvement. right? But there's so many things complicating this, right? Like Israel's supplying Russia with weapons, right? And like U.S. and Israel, I'm sorry, Iran is supplying Russia with weapons. You know, U.S. and Israel are allies. There's just a lot of complicated stuff here. So I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. Ultimately, yeah, obviously they're two criminal organizations attacking each other. So like, I mean, yeah, the US shouldn't be involved. Like we should back off. This idea that like Israel's our greatest ally is just fucking stupid by any metric. And yeah, it was I think the April attack was a convenient attack. I think they got information. They were like, "Oh shit, we can bomb Damascus. These people that we want are there." And so they did it, and it was probably stupid, but it kind of works in their favor because, you know, the Gaza, you know, Rafah kind of offensive is stalled out for the last month. They need something, and Iran wanted something. So I don't think it behooves anyone to do anything, though I think Israel might try to do like a little minor attack. We just hope that a mistake doesn't occur.
All right, thank you.
You know?
Corey, please.
I'll try to be brief. So, well, as I think Scott alluded to, you know, I find geopolitics complicated, but that might be my ignorance. But also, I have also no problem admitting that, you know, I'm not the most well-read in geopolitics. But from what I can gather and the information that's been provided and the article that you provided, Prime, pretty much everything that Lactoid sort of outlined, I largely like agree with in terms of like from what I can tell and as outlined in the article, the retaliation by Iran was largely just like posturing, just trying to send the message that they're not going to whatever be a doormat essentially. And at the end of the day, I don't think essentially two wrongs make a right, in that Israel was not justified, I guess, in the initial attack, and that Iran is not justified in the retaliation. But it's understandable why they would retaliate, just to send the message overall and just like political posturing. And I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Ali.
So I'm not like the big geopolitic guy as well, Corey. You know, me and you. So I'm not big on like the laws and the contracts and the blah, blah, blah. I just kind of see what happens. I made my decision. I'm obviously of the land, so I have my own opinions. Were they justified? I mean, this is a war that's been going on forever. Justified isn't even like a question. These are two, I call them terrorist regimes, both Israel, Iran, all the people, you know, all people involved. So I think these are just people fighting. Does America need to get involved? No. I don't see why we need to. I don't see why we keep looking at Israel like they're our greatest fucking ally when all they do. Like, it seems that we just keep getting into a lot of shit from that region due to that like specific country from ours. So I don't think we need to involve ourselves. But I kind of just I just want America to butt out, and I want to see how it plays out at this point.
Thank you. FQ.
I'm going to keep it really short. So I think that Iran's response to Israel's decision to attack the consulate, I think that it was justified. I don't think that the United States should involve itself with by supporting Israel if it does choose to retaliate against Iran, and that seems to be like the way that the United States seems to be heading anyway, which is a good thing. And that's the short of it. But I'm interested to hear what the rest of your thoughts are.
QB.
Yeah, everything very Queen said, but I'm actually curious to see like what you guys think about the idea that because this to me seems really irrational for Israel to do, right? Especially with what's going on in Gaza right now. It feels like they need all the PR they can get, right? All the positive PR they can get. So this strike in Syria, which just seems like they're instigating some kind of like fight, because that is an escalation, right? And them vowing to exact a price for the counterattack just seems like ridiculous to me, right? It seems like an irrational thing for them to do. So I'm curious to see if any of you believe that this is Netanyahu trying to hold on to power by maybe escalating the conflict or getting Israel into such a tenuous position that people are going to be afraid to vote him out because he has the experience, right? Maybe he'll use that to build himself some kind of staying power to hold on to power.
Echo.
Yeah, well, just piggyback on that, because I was going to go exactly in that direction. I think it's very important to make distinctions when we're talking about this subject between different entities. Like, for instance, being able to distinguish between the Palestinian people and and Palestinian Authority, and then Hamas, and making a distinction between Israel and Likud and the leader of Likud. Right? These are all people, which would be Netanyahu. These are all entities that may have significant overlap at points, but have to be distinguished from each other because we're going to have to work with some of these people on into the future, whereas some of them are going to presumably go away over time. And so we have to know who it is we have to deal with permanently and who it is that we have to sort of focus on. And I think that Netanyahu does see conflict as an opportunity. He's still dealing with this corruption prosecution that's happening with the Supreme Court there, and he's incredibly unpopular. And this attack actually made him less popular, not more, because it came out that he had been warned about October 7th and sort of ignored it. And then he placed his resources in the West Bank when the attack was on Gaza because he ignored the warning about what was going to happen in Gaza. And also there's good reason to believe that he started using that some of his funding that he was able to control benefited Hamas in certain ways, because really in that region it has been both extremes against the middle, because the people on the extremes want constant war. They want to, anytime they come on the verge of peace, it's the extremes that go and do something, even to the extent that Rabin was assassinated, and prior to that, Netanyahu was himself dancing in front of his effigy at a protest, fantasizing about his death. And he was killed by a conservative, and it worked. Conservatives are now in charge of Israel. So I think that what we're finding is that these sort of, it sounds super cynical to think that somebody like Netanyahu would benefit from conflict like this, but in the history of that region, it's the extremists who do benefit from things like this, and they've shown themselves over and over again to be willing to do things that from our eyes on this side of the planet sound insane to think that established governmental officials would support, but here they are. The best thing for Israel to do right now, honestly, would be to ignore everything, because they have been very successful. They got assistance from the United States and from other countries to help shoot down that entire barrage of missiles and drones that were coming their way. And it was so successful that Biden felt comfortable telling him, you will not retaliate. We're not going to support you if you retaliate, and you should not retaliate. This needs to be the end of it. And that, I'm not sure that's something he would have told Netanyahu 6 months ago.
Yips.
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to have a little bit of a different take than most people here, it looks like.
The whoopins.
The whoopins. Listen, the only moral choice by any metric is that Iran should unequivocally be taken out as a player in the region. Their regime should be changed and military capabilities taken away from them. The Telegraph had a very interesting article about adversarial powers forming an alliance together this week. In my opinion, the main players in this anti-democracy alliances forming are Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China. There are other supporting players, but those are the main ones. As someone mentioned above, Iran is sending loads of drones to Russia. If you are pro-Ukraine, then you have to be pro-intervention on Iran. My solution is real simple. Iran is talking a lot of smack for someone with so much oil. In previous eras, Iran would have already been invaded and their oil fields chopped up. In fact, I think that we should go in there and take them out and take their oil fields as reparations for the amount of terrorism they funded worldwide. This would also help take out this adversarial alliance.
Move the oil fields over here.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, do whatever it takes. On top of that, it's clear the Biden administration is inept in regards to Iran, right? They put sanctions on them, and then last year they had a record year with 88 billion sold in oil revenue. Clearly, at this point, active intervention is the only correct answer.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I'm gonna go get some cookies and milk.
Yeah.
I think
Good
Gibbs
idea.
convinced me. I'm on board.
The whoopins, you're
Send in the drones.
You're team whoopins.
And stop their drones. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, but it can't be one of these like tit for tat like gang killings. Like it has to be like an actual like full on invasion,
regime
like
change,
regime
nuclear
change,
capabilities gone, oil
bring
fields
back
signed
the
over to
Shah
Halliburton.
kind of thing going on.
Yeah, their oil fields are now with the property of Halliburton and Exxon. Maybe like we give Israel one of them.
You want to do a nation building?
Halliburton, just have Halliburton own the country directly.
I mean, sure, listen, they're acting
Nation
up too
building
much.
really worked out in the past.
Yeah, that's
Iran.
what
I'm not even
highlight.
talking about nation building. I'm talking about coming in there and wholesale taking their shit because they've been fucking up for too long. Like that's you're not talking about
It just
nation
becomes
building.
the Iran of America.
I'm just saying, like, they could be a special economic zone. You could be like, I don't know, Little Texas or something, and like not have like
Little
any rights
Texas.
of America. You know what I'm saying?
I haven't looked recently. I'm pretty sure Iran is much bigger geographically.
Either way.
Slightly.
Well, that's just it. Iran makes Iraq and Afghanistan look like bit players, like in the field. People don't realize how much stronger Iran is than any of the other surrounding countries. It's the only like major country in the Muslim world, essentially, that hasn't been colonized like historically.
Well, that's one more reason to take him out right now because we're sitting here talking about diplomacy and peace, and those are well and good goals. But all we're really letting to happen is something nasty fester under the skin. They're basically like a staph infection. The longer you let them sit there and don't treat it, it's gonna get worse. It's like cancer. If you don't go and dig out this cancer, then guess what? It kills you. And that's what's happening now.
I don't endorse any of these words coming out of his mouth, but okay.
Hold on. He's talking about the leadership, like the people
regime.
of Iran.
I said the regime.
The people of Iran are actually like more pro-American than you think, right?
Yeah, I said other
people generally don't like to live under like an authoritarian theocracy.
So
gives
right,
us
but
sort
then
of
when
like
we
if
found out that we were the ones that installed the Shah in Iran, then the people didn't react so happily to it, right?
Well, we should have backed the Shah more than we did.
They like our
revolution
values,
to begin
not
with.
us.
Like we caused that by people like Gibbs saying, "Hey, what's the worst that can happen? Let's put our guy in there.
No,
let's
let we got Noriega in prison. Let's let him go run it. For
50 years of fundamentalist Islamic regime.
It's because we backed off, though. Like if we supported the Shah, like just like if we supported the Bay of Pigs invasion, like it could have ended differently, right? Really. Prior to 9/11, U.S. military policy on these countries was pretty lackluster. It was pretty like, one foot in the water kind of situation, right?
But,
like if the Shah had like superior U.S. support, I don't know if he actually would have fallen.
Lactoid. Do you? I want to, and I don't know. So like, please let me know. Do you really truly believe that like? Do you believe that we should be have been supporting the Shah and like on his totalitarian tendencies, or are you just saying we should be supporting our man in Iran, right? So
So given the historical context, so the Shah, I view the Shah as like a historical figure, very much like I view people like Pinochet in Chile, or South Korea was dictatorship prior to becoming a democracy, Taiwan, etc. Right, Chiang Kai-shek. All of these sort of like not really democratic countries, but they were within the Western sphere of influence, right? And they accepted capitalism, they were part of the system. Over time, and we also saw this with Spain, right? One of the first members of NATO. Over time, these countries are sort of uniquely, not uniquely, but because they're not within the behind the Iron Curtain, they're not within the sphere of influence in the Soviet Union. Like over time, they democratized, right? You have South Korea over time outgrowing its fascist dictatorship and becoming like a very good country. Same thing with Taiwan. Same thing with Chile. Same thing like you see time and time again this happening. I would predict that South Vietnam and Iran would have followed similar tracks had they not fallen.
Wait.
And same thing with the Bay of Pigs if we would have succeeded in
no, this doesn't make sense, right? You're saying that there's these other countries where there were dictatorships, and those dictatorships fell, right? And then they didn't fall. They didn't fall. So under U.S. influence and U.S. pressure, there was an alleviation of the authoritarian nature of those leaders. We kind of saw this happening in Iran prior to the fall of the Shah. There's like statements of the Shah bragging about how like the miniskirts in Tehran are shorter than those in Miami, right? Because there was it was really a golden age in Iran for women's liberation and freedom of expression. There was this authoritarian government because it was not a democracy. But I do think under U.S. guidance and U.S. influence over time,
that could have been alleviated, but we didn't commit to that future like we did with Vietnam, which arguably perhaps there's a better argument there that we shouldn't have.
Wait a minute, hold on. But the Shaw's put in place, and maybe I'm mixing up my my history here, and that could be the case, and I do apologize if I do. But like the people of Iran decide, hey, like we got this president here, and democratically we decide that we're going to use our resources for ourselves. Then that's a problem. And so instead we install this Shaw here, and again, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this history, but I believe this is the case. And so like it shows that the U.S. actually doesn't give a fuck about democracy, right? It cares about its interests. And so as long as its interests are being served, that supersedes all, right? So you can do whatever. Now the U.S. doesn't like it when these things are related to itself, right? Like when it gets bad PR, like, oh, okay, so we're militarily helping this government that's brutally repressing its people. It doesn't like that, and so it'll make noises about like human rights, like like the Saudi princes, right? Like, oh yeah, please, like we care about human rights, but like fuck some oil flows. So like to say that, well, under American influence things would have gotten better. Well, I think maybe, but that would be like besides the point, because U.S. doesn't care if things get better. It cares as long as its interests are served in the nation.
So that if you do an internal critique, like I would do an internal critique of any form of utilitarian consequential analysis of geopolitical kind of pressure through history, you have to admit that if you want a country to, in the long term, right? And again, this is internal critique. Obviously, I think they're all terrorist organizations because they're all nation states with plenty of problems. But internal critique from a consequentialist perspective, right? You have to admit that some things are easy to recover from. Some government systems are incredibly difficult to recover from, and those that are easier to recover from, in the long term, lead towards far more liberal tendencies and liberal democracies. So if, for example, fascism is way, way, way better for a country to go through than communism or, let's say, an Islamic authoritarian state. Why? Well, you can just look at any fascist nation state that's ever existed. Germany. You can look at Spain. You can look at Portugal. You can look at every little area, Catalonia, whatever you want, however you want to focus on it.
Italy.
Any place that's been through fascism, 20, 30 years later, they're a liberal democracy doing okay. And any place that's been through communism has this like state capitalism, if you're a Marxist.
You can't bring the Islam people
form
into that,
of shit that's
Qatar.
completely fucked up.
Like you can't bring it. Yeah, if you look at you can't include Islam with that though. Like Islamist countries are wildly successful financially. I mean, like I don't like Iran, but they're good against.
But we're fixing them too. We're fixing Saudi Arabia too, right?
Sure, Saudi Arabia, Qatar's another Islamic fundamentalist country. They have a lot.
They started letting women drive. Right?
Yeah, I mean, they have all these. They all are really good at. Like,
you're supporting
money.
our argument. You're supporting the argument that I'm making via internal critique when I say that, right? The concept is if you can gain a country to have American influence and you can give them IMF loans or whatever. Middle East is a little bit different for places that have oil, obviously. But if you can gain them into the capitalist system where they are tied to us, and you set up governments that are in favor of them, those places do a lot better. Now, obviously, you have places like China, right, where the state capitalism is kind of a little different, where we're working together, but that hasn't influenced the situation because we have very little influence in their government, right? And there's also a little bit of an exception when you look at the Middle East in terms of how their governments differ from, let's say, Europe or Asian countries, et cetera. But the general trend is still true, that if you ally with the West, if you ally with capitalism, if you ally with more, even if you're under fascistic dictatorships and you accept those values, 10, 20, 30 years later, you end up in a liberal democracy, just like many Western other countries. And if you don't, you end up in places like fucking China, where like you can't even eat food or buy products because you can't even buy a house because of tofu construction. Everything is a lie. Everything is horrible. Everything is suffering. Foxconn factory just had a run just now where they make your iPhones, like just had a run on the fences where the barbed wire is faced on the inside to keep them inside and to make sure that they bleed and potentially die if they try to stop their 12-hour shifts making your iPhones. Like, China's a fucking hellscape, and it still is. Why? Because they didn't adopt fascism, they adopted communism. I would prefer that they adopt anarchism, but there's your
wait. So to be clear, I feel like you're like rambling on a lot. Like, can we just like be very clear? Because what Lactoid's proposing, what Lactoid and Gibbs I think are proposing is, well, I think Gibbs is being way more direct, saying that we should do this today. Lactoid is saying we should have done it back then. Right. Scott, are you saying that if the United States were to attack Iran, start a war, topple the regime, quote unquote, and then install their own person there and fucking colonize the area, right? And Americanize the area over the next couple of decades. Would you support something like that, Scott?
No, of course not. That's why I said it's an internal critique. What I said is does the trend, if the trend holds true, as it has for most situations, I would say statistically speaking, Iran's likely to end up a liberal democracy more than it is some fucked up hellscape. If you invest enough time and resources and power, it will probably become a trading partner that is a liberal democracy, and Israel will no longer be our quote unquote greatest ally. You'd have to support a revolution. You'd have to take it over.
It's a consistent trend.
Good.
And then we can rebuild it to our liking. You know,
I'm being prescriptive here about like what seems to be
but
true,
Gibbs,
not about
like, haven't we
it's
seen
right.
Gibbs? I feel like we've seen again and again that when we do these kind of like regime change things, all we really do at the end of the day is give other people who already hate us more reasons to hate us. We radicalize people who didn't hate us that much, maybe kind of disliked us, and then it just kind of continues on this never-ending like conflict, right?
Yeah, I mean,
so Gibbs, why would you? I don't understand why you would propose that we do that again.
So a couple things. One, they have oil, so we can take that. That's the big one. Second,
okay, but be realistic though. I understand oil. Haha, I get it.
Arguably, that's one of the most realistic answers.
I mean, I'm being 100% honest with you. Like, what have wars been fought over throughout like all of human time? Resources. They got a resource. They're acting up.
Okay, so we should just invade anywhere that has oil, so the United States has control of all oil reserves on the planet.
I'm okay with that.
Is that your actual position?
I mean, it's a position I would probably be in favor of, yeah. But like, as far as what you're saying, even if that wasn't my position, if we go and look and see, like, okay, let me give you an example. Who's stronger, like militarily? Iraq under Saddam Hussein? No, we're not memeing. I know. Listen, I would be like you didn't say.
Unironically support invading every country of the world.
I know that these are high-level concepts and it's hard for you to follow, and someone double downs on them, Scott. So anyway,
you're double downing on the retarded.
Let Gibbs respond. Please go ahead.
What I was asking, Doobie. All right. So as for like the other thing, I would say who was stronger, Saddam Hussein's military, or say what replaced them, which is like the combination of the Saudi militias and not Saudi militias, the Iranian militias and ISIS, right? Well, neither. So ISIS took out a large portion of Syria, made Syria weaker, who's another adversarial power. Iraq ceased to be a threat as like to us. I mean, ISIS wasn't a real threat. They're not going to come take us over, right? So like, I would even say as the superpower, having these groups all fight each other and having power vacuums would even be beneficial, like a long scale. Like, I know that sounds terrible and that's bad, but that's been proxy wars have been a tactic by superpowers and major powers for as long as countries have existed. And I would say that
sounds bad because it is.
Well, I also disagree with this dumbass. We're all like, hey, countries are evil terrorist organizations because they have leadership. But like, we don't have to go into that specific lens. I'll give you a lens, though. I would say the country has a moral imperative to do what's best for their citizen, and having adversarial powers weakened or eliminated and having a power vacuum in regions like this is a moral imperative of the country to do that because they have to do what's best for their citizens.
Hold on, but how? Because it feels like what you're proposing would lead to more danger for American citizens.
No.
And more potential for terrorist attacks, more potential for war that could get Americans killed.
Level. That's on a micro level. What's more dangerous, Iran with a nuke, or Iran like sponsoring some disgruntled Iranian dude from?
Or what if you just had Iran with like Iran and the United States with stable, good relations? So they weren't adversaries and they weren't attacking each other and going.
I live in the real world. That's not happening. So I mean,
it's not happening currently, but we could get there, right? I mean, we've stabilized relations with hostile powers before.
I don't see that ever happening. I don't ever see that happening. They're
ever?
No, definitely not unless we go
Why?
take them out, start over. Because they're literally forming an alliance. They're literally forming an alliance with other countries against us. Their interests are aligned to take us out. Like, that's what their interests are. So like, unless we go in there and do something drastic, then no, that's not going to change to, hey, we're going to be nicer to you. Like, that's just not realistic.
What do you think nicer to them means, right? Like, consider, because actually, let me start with this. Do you think that Iran, the leadership, are rational actors?
Dude said he
Rational
wants to
actors?
invade literally every country with like 50% of the planet. Why are we treating him like he's a serious person?
I mean, why do we treat you like a serious person when you sit here and have to look through everything that's a single worldview lens and then say stupid shit like, well, every country's government is a terrorist organization because this one person who read Ayn Rand one time back in college, thinks that anybody that's not that's part of a country is an evil, immoralist thing. Like, yada. Listen, I sit here and listen to your bullshit for panels and panels. You literally talk for an hour and a half about like the subjectivity of art and Ayn Rand. No one gives a shit about that. Let's talk about some real issues. And you're sitting here going, oh, well, he's not a serious actor. How about you drink a warm glass and shut the fuck up? That would do us all a favor. Like, I mean, like, Jesus Christ. He's acting like Aphrodite's coming down from the heavens and has only blessed him with the wisdom and the Lord of the Spirit coming down. It's the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard. Like, and then he's going to sit here and say, oh, Gibbs is not a serious person because he wants to empire builder with America. I'm so smart. God, Jesus Christ. Oh, no,
Okay,
you can't
hold on.
follow
So Gibbs, I understand the sentiment, Gibbs, but what you did say was fucking ridiculous, right? It'd be ridiculous for the United States to invade like half the planet, right? For oil.
Yeah, I mean, I get that you have content brain right now, and you're just saying.
I mean, it's not content brain. These are all factual statements. I mean, it's all factual statements. I'm glad that you think it's content, and you can't recognize that these are real assessments and real internal and external critiques of your terrible ass viewpoint and your points. But we're moving on, Papa.
Aphrodite didn't come down and just bless you. That's true. That's that part.
That's the bottom line.
Fair enough. Yes. And I only read Ayn Rand once in college. I get it's a string of stupid insults to cover.
I mean, it's all factual insults. That's all factual. They're all factual points. I mean, are you telling me you literally every panel you don't
reality is tenuous.
Hold on, no. You're sitting here, you're literally trying to tell me that every single fucking panel we come on, we don't have to do this ANCAP bullshit where we push everything through this fucking tiny ass like lens that 0.007% of my nut hairs population has. Like, that's what you're sitting here doing. Every single panel, you sit here and you do this bullshit, and then you have the audacity, but like much less the gall to sit here and go, oh, Gibbs is a serious. Oh, these things are just memes. No, Papa, these are actual critiques of your fucking viewpoint. You literally do this every panel. Every panel, you want to sit here and push everything through this tiny.
Get it off your chest.
I mean, I'm telling you the facts. Like, and then you're
let get off your chest. Yes, I understand.
I am getting it off my chest.
So again, your diatribe, your content brain diatribe aside.
My content brain diatribe. Okay.
Why
I'm just saying what everybody else is
like
thinking.
You're a serious person when you say that you want to invade half of the world.
It is literally as about as serious as your fucking.
Yeah, I think it's just being exaggerative. We're kind of at one point.
Like that's you're literally over here like we're like literally you say like that's the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard.
So I'm
hypocrisy at its best.
Okay, one second.
You got any fucking arguments?
One second. Oh no. We're not gonna make this whole panel about this. We're not gonna diverge. Okay, all right. We are. Look, we got
I agree.
a tiny amount
all
of
the insults stand.
We have
because they're so fucking retarded.
A tiny amount of business coming in, and from YouTube, Mr. I don't know. They Inflatable Fowl says, would Scott really prefer Hitler to Khrushchev? So that was the question. If you could answer that quickly, and then we can move on from this, please.
Would I prefer Hitler to Khrushchev? Well, I wouldn't prefer either. I did an internal critique. So, I mean, if I was forced to choose gun to my head between like which one would work, knowing their past, I mean, I guess Khrushchev, right? Like, but that doesn't actually address the claim, which is that is it easier for countries to come from, to survive fascism versus surviving communism? The answer is always fascism. And the reason is they have basically the same economic model, but fascism doesn't preach dysgenic family things. And that's the real key difference here, is that leftism is anti-family. It spreads people, it breaks families apart, and it doesn't maintain a semblance of the concept of private property, whereas fascism pretends private property exists and doesn't support dysgenic things in the family structure. And so it's easier to heal from fascism and the evils of fascism than communism.
Understood. Thank you so much. And Corey will be happy. It only took me 4 minutes to address that one. So there we go.
This is
Um,
dramatic improvement. I can graph it.
Put it on the calendar, Corey.
Okay, so I want to pull back from that, but like, okay, so Admiral Gibbs, you were oh, and Corey, I haven't forgotten you did have your hand up. Admiral Gibbs, you were talking about like a need to invade these countries, and I think Doopy was trying to engage with you there as well. Like, oh yeah. That's I did ask you a question. Do you think the Iran, the leadership, is irrational actors?
I mean, I think by some metrics, most metrics, they would be rational actors. Like I don't want to be one of these people that's like define rational, but like do I consider them rational? Like personally, to through my lens that I'm putting it through, maybe not, right? But like, do I think that they have like rationality that they're following as like in like a like I don't know
Do you
bird's
think
eye
they
view?
can, if you put incentives and disincentives in front of them, that they
Yeah,
can
I
respond
absolutely.
to
I
this?
think they are. They
Okay.
are. I mean, and that's kind of why I have an issue
Okay.
with how the diplomacy's been handling currently, right? Like we keep incentivizing them to do things, and then it incentivizes this bad behavior, right? As
But
opposed to like we've been giving them too much carrot. It's time for the stick.
sure. Okay, so you're more for gunship diplomacy. I'm saying that, and I think Juby was going this direction, but he can correct me. Is that like, if we approached Iran, right, and this would take decades because we'd have to build trust, and we don't have that at all at this point, right? But if we approached Iran and we're like, okay, you need this and that, right? And these resources, we're gonna give you these resources, and we're gonna give you these privileges, right? And in return, hey, you do this for us. That like we can build a mutual beneficial relationship in which we are exchanging resources and privileges and access and whatever that might be, right? To the goal of normalizing relationships. You're saying, because before you said that was impossible. You can't see in the future how we could ever normalize relationships with Iran. But I don't understand why that can't be the case. If we, give them
If Israel's
incentives.
still on the board,
This was tried.
be able to be normalization.
Yeah,
outside of that,
That might be
outside
the
of
case.
that,
I agreed.
right? Outside of that, I'd agree with your notion. But if Israel's still on the board, it doesn't matter how
We
much
should take-
relation.
we should take our alliance with Israel off the board.
It's
But,
not.
yeah.
It's not just Israel. It's also
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I would also. Yeah, I was gonna say there's
once
like
again,
Sure, I hear. But like, so again, I'm not saying this would happen over. I'm not okay. One, I'm not saying that it would happen overnight, and I'm not saying that we would ever be like friends. Normalization doesn't necessarily mean friendship, right? That we become allies, but just that like we've normalized.
But to push back
to
on that,
Lactoid's point, the Sunni Shia thing is probably a lot easier to resolve than the Zionist Muslim thing.
No. It's well, real quick. It's not a religion thing. It has to do with the power balance in that area, right? So the biggest example I can think of is right now in Yemen. One of Biden's first acts was to delist the Houthis as a terrorist organization, and he also relieved sanctions on their oil sales. And obviously, it didn't fucking work because Iran is not only an enemy to Israel, but they're also an enemy to Saudi Arabia through their funding of the Houthis and rebel groups and pro-Shia rebel groups in Yemen, right? And they're going to continue to do that because they want to expand their power projection at the expense of Saudi Arabia. It's unfortunate, but when we're like pushing for an ally kind of arrangement with Saudi Arabia and Israel, I mean, making friends with Iran is going to be fucking like really difficult. I just don't see how
that's what I was saying. If remove Israel from the board, right? It's probably easier to normalize relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia with America if Israel isn't also part of the equation.
So I'm going to let
easier, but I don't know if possible.
I'll take easier.
Respond. But thank you, Tight Boy 253 for the $2 super chat. I didn't say anything, but it's your first super chat.
I think you said enough.
Yeah, I think it's. Consider supporting the channel with super chats like our friend.
Oh, I think that's Dre Clouds. He's a guy in the waiting room. I think he's been asking to come in. He's really upset at Gibbs.
This guy is a saboteur and is being a fascist. I guess he's talking. Sorry, this is a closed panel. I do thank you for that. But if you want to address him afterwards, you can. I can let you in afterwards. But like right now, it's a closed panel. But like stick around. We can let you in and have a discussion. Oh, and I think they just also sent me another $2. Let me end the discussion with another $2. Again, I'm sorry. This is a closed discussion, but we can have you in as soon as we're done, and we'll be done.
If you give Prime $100, he'll let you have a one-on-one with Gibbs.
I think we'll all accept that.
Yes.
Real quick.
Yes.
Real quick.
But
This
yeah.
is
You can
this
just
is kind
wait,
of one
like,
of my
45 minutes.
this is one of my points of contention about just covering recent geopolitical things and debates, and especially when it comes to conflicts where no media source is ever to really be trusted. I'm wondering if anybody else is, because I'm getting a bunch of people telling me that like the IRGC building in the consulate is not the same building, that they're next to each other, and that there are photos of the consulate building, not an embassy because that's a higher tier, but that they actually bombed the building next to it, and that they didn't bomb like a diplomatic building at all, just the building next to a diplomatic building that happened to contain Iranian generals in a country, Syria, which has never rescinded their declaration of war against Israel. So Syria is still at war with Israel, and Iran is obviously been funding proxy wars against Israel nonstop since 48. Well, maybe not since 40, but yeah, right. So I actually do wonder if, again, I view this differently as an anarchist, but I'm just curious if any of you are getting the same information.
I haven't heard that. I've only heard that it was a diplomatic compound. I've heard that again and again, but that doesn't mean it's not wrong. I can imagine that might be misinterpreted within the news.
It doesn't actually change it for me either, though.
Yeah,
like Iran still has to like retaliate.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give the panel what's going on.
Fair enough.
Because I mean, like, we're all still kind of waiting for Iran to respond.
I think I missed a question in there somewhere.
I was just I was saying, is anybody else getting this? Because I'm seeing claims. A bunch of people are like mad at me. They're like, hey, dude, it's the IRGC building. It's not actually a consulate. So they're not actually bombing like a diplomatic place that should have some like immunity. So that changes whether or not, from like a NATO, articles, a convention, war, et cetera, whether or not Iran is actually justified in the retaliation. Because
hold on, but if there's even if it was an embassy, if there's generals in there, like, doesn't it become a military target?
Yeah, that happens.
No, I don't think that's true.
Really? So I can just store my military assets in an embassy, and you can't touch it because it's an embassy? That's ridiculous.
Well, my understanding is that embassies are meant to be. You're not supposed to attack embassies, even if there are like generals in them, right?
But yeah, no I think that's different from having military assets, like in terms of like an arsenal. Like if it has an arsenal, that might change it, but I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, especially given that these two nations aren't like formally at war, are they?
No, Syria and Israel are formally at war, right? So bombing anything in Syria is still it's justified.
Yeah, if it's a diplomatic compound, then it's Iran's territory.
If it's a diplomatic, right? Yeah. If it's diplomatic compound, then it's Iran's, like, has some level of presumed protection. But if it's the Iranian Revolutionary Guards building, and it's just military targets from a country that is funding terrorism throughout the region and is funding the Houthis as they're currently bombing Israeli ships in the Red Sea right now, right? Like, and is like Hezbollah sending missiles funded by Iran over their border right now.
But it doesn't make much of a difference. It kind of changes the situation. I mean, like, but does it really?
Again,
but because
I'm throwing.
Yeah, I hear you. No, I hear you. I hear you. I think it
changes
like the viewpoint of like what did Israel actually do, right? Did they bomb a military target or did they bomb a diplomatic target? So fair enough, right? But in the end,
but they did either or, right?
Difference, yeah.
There's military asset. It reminds me of like a John Wick kind of scenario. Like, you can't touch me here. I'm in the building. I'm safe. It seems like a ridiculous way to.
I mean, if that's everybody's opinion, that's fine. Yeah. If it doesn't matter to anybody whether or not it was a diplomatic building or a military target, then I mean, fuck it. But
let's go.
To a lot of people, I presume it would.
Yeah, my understanding is that it was.
They should do their nuclear research in the embassy. That's a good idea.
It's my understanding is that it's a building within the diplomatic compound, like I think right next to the actual embassy.
Right next to.
Yeah, but
right next
to answer your previous question, right? Like, none of that really matters. Like, so, like, y'all are saying, we're talking about, hey, like, y'all don't think that y'all are arguing that there's possibly this diplomatic solution to being friendly with Iran, right? I'm saying that every time we've tried to build a bridge with Iran, They have turned around and taken that as an opportunity to enrich themselves at our expense, or do things and work closer with their allies to like work adversarial to our interests, right? And
Like
not
when?
like for example,
Yeah,
whenever
like
we they did the nuke deal with under Obama, right? They did the nuke deal under Obama, and
whose
like
money was that they got?
listen, I don't give a shit about that. And the point
And
that
they
I
got their
make,
own money back, didn't
Well,
they?
yeah,
either
it was
way,
their money.
they shouldn't have got any of the money back. Fuck them. Like first of all,
Well,
second
okay,
of
but
all,
that's
But
not.
how did they
That's
gain
not.
from us? How did
Doobie,
they take from us?
Doobie, I can give you an example, right? When Biden alleviated the economic sanctions prohibiting them from trading oil with China, they took that money and immediately funded Hezbollah in Lebanon, right? So that's an example of them of us giving them like a little bit of room, them taking that money they were making from oil sales and using it to fund terrorism against Israel.
I mean, not
that's a
only that, they
different
also
claim,
have used it to fund their like nuke plants, all sorts of. Anyway, the point is, they every time they've done it, whether you want to say it's directly, you say they got their money back. Every time they've had a chance where we worked with them, they've taken a conscious and deliberate and open. And that's the big one, open step to like make moves that are adversarial towards us, right? And that's not even factoring in that we have friendships with Saudi Arabia, we have friendships with Israel, that we're friends with Turkey. Like these are all groups that they don't like, right? So like we're sitting here going, oh, okay, we're working with these people, but hey, these people are going to sit here and work adversarial to us, but we can somehow just ignore all that and we can be buddy friends. That's not realistic, and they're showing us that's not realistic because anytime we've done that, they actively take a stance against us. Like I don't see how you can even argue that.
I don't understand. So I do understand that like Prime Guys maybe oversold the position, right? But I don't think it needs to be a dichotomy between buddy friends with Iran and like should we continue to support and defend Israel with military and potentially get involved in a conflict against Iran? Or should we get the fuck out and listen to what they're saying when Iran says, America, you do not need to be involved in this? Like they put out a statement saying, America, you don't have to be a part of this. You can avoid this war completely. Right?
Cool.
So
and I have a response to
I
them.
don't
Tough
think that
titties,
those
we're
two.
here. Like that's yeah, cool. I'm glad that they put out a statement. Guess what? We're here. They know we're here. Like once
Tough
again,
titties.
it's not reality. Tough titties is our response. Like
We should send a diplomatic.
Biden should get up.
We
yeah.
should send a diplomatic cable
I
with
mean-
that written there. Just tough titties. Yeah.
Like
Okay.
Famous
So the
political
rationale,
strategy.
the rationale here is that there's a nation state that presents some level of threat towards the American citizenry and the American, right? And that is Iran. The problem I have with this is that this doesn't just apply to Iran, right? This applies to China, obviously. This applies to North Korea, though to a much less degree in terms of threat, though it does in terms of precious metal market, because there are precious metals in North Korea that are utilized in Taiwanese and Chinese factories. And that's mostly how the regime is prepped up and stays afloat, because we buy electronics that require precious metals, and they really only come from a couple of places, Colorado being one of them, places in Africa, a few places in South America and North Korea, right? There are a lot of nation states, Russia, for example, is an obvious threat to us, a threat to the global world order. So how do we make this decision about whom we should full scale invade and whom we shouldn't? And so like obviously the rationale can't just be these are bad guys that fund terrorism, right? Because if that was the only criteria, we would have to invade like most of the world other than like Europe, a few South American countries, and like a few African countries.
Good chance of winning, and the fact that other countries you just listed have nuclear weapons.
yeah, I mean Iran
Well,
got no
actually-
nukes. It's tough tits for them. Let's go take them
Pakistan's-
out. Like Russia
Pakistan's
does.
our ally and a threat. They have nukes.
Lacto,
who?
can you explain what the issue with them is? What the issue is with Iran funding Hezbollah? Like from an American
Okay.
perspective.
Okay, well, so the two breaks that I know that Biden gave when he was elected to Iran, which was delisting the Houthis, which I think backfired because the Houthis are essentially an arm of Iran that then went on to proceed, to attack U.S. shipping or international shipping and other civilian targets. And the other one is
Okay,
funding.
but that's I think framing it that way is
Well, but that's what
is
happened, right?
Disingenuous.
I disagree that it's disingenuous. We saw that happen after the bone was given. We also saw when the sanctions.
No, hold
were
on. We saw
alleviated-
that happen after. Hold on. We saw that happen after the Israel's campaign in Gaza, right? In response to this, it's not like they just did it for no reason.
Well, no, I understand, right? But if the Houthis had not been delisted as a terror organization and arguably perhaps they were targeted and removed from power through Saudi support, maybe they wouldn't have been in the position to attack international shipping had Israel when the attack on Israel occurred on October 7th.
Weren't they trying to like impose a blockade to stop try to
consequentialism?
No, I'm saying if the Houthis were not in power, like if the Houthis didn't have control of the strait there,
they wouldn't have been able to impose a. But
right. Then when October 7th happened,
what they did is like terrorism. I wouldn't consider that to be terrorism. They were trying to impose a blockade to support Hamas or support Gaza, right? To keep
they were
funding
attacking
or weapons or whatever.
They were attacking civilian
they're imposing a blockade.
For Europe.
Hold on, they were imposing a blockade. They made it very clear, hey, don't go through this pass. This water's off limits. We're imposing a blockade on this water.
Yeah, you don't get to
they're gonna attack.
You don't get to announce. You don't get to announce a blockade over like a whole vital shipping lane.
Of course,
nations do this all the time.
Okay, hold on. You can in terms of like enforcement. But I guess
how the 6-day war started again.
We have to like really analyze here. Like,
closing down canals.
We can't have
lanes is kind of a big deal. I don't know.
We can't have like a military arm of the Iranian government shut down vital shipping lanes to Europe. This is just like a non-starter in all geopolitics. It can't happen, right? And this would not have happened if the Houthis were not in power to enforce a blockade against the strait. And this is much more, I guess, theoretical. But the Houthis received funding from Iran, obviously, as well as Hezbollah and Hamas. And a lot of this funding comes from inflows of money to Iran, partially from their oil sales that were allowed following the relaxing of the sanctions that happened so they can sell oil to China. Now, why is funding Hezbollah?
This wouldn't have happened if these other nations weren't providing financial and military support to Israel during what I think the Houthis consider to be a genocide, right? So from their perspective, right, all they're trying to do is stop this Jewish supremacist ethno state from killing people, killing Arabs, right?
Sure.
So
I understand that perspective.
But when you present them, but when you present them, you speak about them as if they're just like terrorists or something, and they're doing it for no reason, or they're jihadists who just want to kill.
What I'm saying is,
let a finish point.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, and this is what Gibbs is trying to get at, right? Gibbs has very much like a Western-centric point of view, and the idea of we're in the world and West is best, and there is a sort of we have to recognize poles like power polarity that exists in the world, and recognize that where U.S. influence is, generally things get better in metrics that we care about. This is true when it comes to Israel, arguably. This is true when it comes to many places around the world. And so what he's looking for is, okay, we want to we're talking about giving a bone to Iran, we have to first agree that this is arguably for the best interest of America. And then the argument is, here's why it actually hasn't worked out for America when we have the Houthis closing off the straits and when we have funding for Hezbollah and Hamas, which were involved in the October 7th attack on Israel, right? So from a Western perspective, this did not work out, right? Giving bones to Iran doesn't work out. Now you can say, well, fuck the Western perspective, like Iran's justified in what they do. This is going to be an entirely subjective discussion.
Would you apply this to the same kind of breakdown to the U.S.'s support of Israel? Because we could look at many reasons our continued support of Israel has been a negative for us, right? Not just in the region, but across the world. So would you say that maybe the U.S. should stop supporting Israel, stop sending them billions of dollars every year?
I think that it's a more complicated analysis about whether or not our alliance with Israel is beneficial to us, as opposed to giving Iran a bone. As long as we have the alliance with Israel, I don't think that giving Iran a bone is going to be particularly helpful. But I guess if we're starting from scratch, what is the benefit of having an ally like Israel? I mean, we're going to get into some really base level philosophy here of the way Israel conducts government, the rights they provide to women and LGBTQ people, and their perspective on free market capitalism, and how they interact with the world in a way that the surrounding countries just simply don't interact with the world, and why supporting beacons like that can be beneficial in the long run, even though it might draw some ire from some of the more authoritarian countries that we deal with.
I don't think. Go ahead.
Just quickly, because another super chat came in from Infallible Fowl. I think that's before I said inflatable fowl. Did I say that?
I
Yeah,
don't
you
know.
did say inflatable foul.
I said inflatable. I do apologize. It's infallible. Okay, I'm so sorry. Five $5 super chat. We need to face reality. Iranian military opposes Israel and Saudi Arabia. If you're hoping we give peace a chance, be ready to be disappointed. Sadly, thank you for that super chat and the kindness of supporting this community. Consider subbing to the channel, getting bits, getting subs, so I can keep doing all this. If you like this stuff, then support me in doing this. Oh, someone did actually. Thank you for. Oh, God damn it. Corey's alright, but thank you, Mock Gaming Bot, for gifting a sub. Thank you, Admiral Gibbs, for gifting a sub 4 hours ago.
Gifted subs should only count at the end of the show, anyways. I'll give you leeway on gifted subs.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. DB, finish your point, and then I do want to get to Corey. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it makes any sense to hold Israel up as some kind of beacon within the region, or to say that because I think that implies that if we had a similar relationship with any other of these nations, right, that we couldn't get them to a similar place, right? Maybe not culturally.
Is there any other
our
liberal
cultures are
democracy in the region? Is there any other liberal democracy
hold on.
in the region?
Well, this is hold on, but I think this is what I was going to get
Around
to,
Israel,
right? Because I think our relationship with Israel for decades now hasn't been hostile. It's been very supportive. We've been funding them, giving them tons of influence within the United States through our politicians. So I don't think we have a relationship, or you can compare our relationship with Israel to our relationship with any of these other Arab countries. And I don't think it makes sense to say that if we had a similar relationship with any of these countries, decades down the line, they wouldn't be in a similar place. They wouldn't be much more westernized, much more Americanized, much more liberal, much more capitalistic. I think they could absolutely get to that place.
That's always the.
Could you hold on with your criticism, because Corey's been waiting for quite a long time, but don't worry, we'll get back to Corey.
Oh, well, this is, I don't want to derail, but I just want to, so unlike some people here, I actually do take you seriously, Gibbs. And like, I am concerned with some of your claims that you made, so I'm just trying to tease out, like, essentially how war hawkish you are, where if
Very
is okay, so yeah, so out of my let's say own interest for myself and my fellow friend Lactoid, let's say the U.S. starts running out of fresh water, which might be on track to do that, and Canada has a large supply of fresh water.
It's tough titties for Canada. Looks like we're taking that.
Okay, and just to maybe further clarify, do you think you might have answered this before, but I just don't remember, so I apologize. Do you think the United States should have withdrew from Afghanistan, or should have stayed there and do more?
Well, that's a real good question. With the Afghanistan one, I could see both arguments, right? On that side, I think the way it was done poorly. But I could see the argument that if we'd stayed and maybe got a few different regime, I don't know, administrations in there, because what was the first one, Kazi, and then the second guy. I could see the argument maybe you eventually get somebody who does the job well and the country takes off, right? I think that some of the citizens there would say they were benefiting quite a bit from being under the puppet regime. I would say women were getting to go to school. There was a lot of more freedoms. I think some people definitely benefited. However, that being said, it seems pretty clear to me, the way they fucking laid down like a whore on nickel night after we pulled out, that they fucking are they're just done. They just didn't want this. So I guess that was the right decision to pull out. If they're just willing to just give up that easily.
It's a great saying.
I disagree strongly.
But
I'm going to use that.
You should. You're going to have it. If they're just going to lay down and give up, then I guess they didn't really want it. I guess the right decision to pull out.
I think FQ, don't shake your head at him, right? I think he's your the dark country version of you, right? Because you
mean?
Like peas in a pot.
So I'm saying
what does that mean?
I'll tell you what it means. I'll say that
he's the alter FQ.
Yeah. He has you have a beautiful way of spinning metaphors, right, to get your point across, to paint a picture. Our friend Gibbs does the same. He just from a little.
You're both artists.
Oh, yes. Except for your analogies are about a prostitute that you're pulling out of. Okay.
Listen, I'm just saying, if the shoe fits, you know what I'm saying? Like,
or the penis.
shoe
But like,
fits.
but anyway.
Hopefully, it's not a shoe. Let's pray it's
Oh,
not.
God.
Dear God.
But, yeah, just to further, so like, if it was up to you, Gibbs, like if you were in charge, okay, like you would have made the decision to like not like obviously we're like doing hindsight is 2020, but like you would have probably made the decision to like stay there. Like we got like
yeah, I don't think we ever invested enough into Afghanistan, in my opinion. I think if we had put more resources into it, then we would have had a better.
That is interesting.
1 trillion wasn't enough.
McCain said 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real thing. Like, I think if you're really talking about like nation building, then like I think one of our biggest problems is sometimes we get out too quick, right? Or we don't like exert our influence in different ways. I think that if you're serious about like making a people very similar to yours, you almost have to look like examples in history where they were successful. Like, I mean, look at like the Roman Empire, right? They were very successful because they stayed there. They built like
they did fall though at some point.
Eventually, sure, but like part of what, but even
they
after
stayed there, the Roman Empire stayed there.
Okay, but hold on, I'm going to explain. So, like, they built things to last, and they built things so their culture would continue, right? I think that's the proper way if you're really a nation build, right? Like, or except in their case, they were just empire building. But say, like, look at Charlemagne. Why do they call him like the Holy Roman Empire? Because he's trying to reunite the Roman Empire. He's trying has this ideal. They hold like things from that culture. It's very like uniform, like kind of across Europe, where like you see this heavy Roman Empire influence, right? And now they have this like almost homogeneous kind of like style of living, right? So same thing with Afghanistan. We're only there 20 years. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket.
20 years.
Well, that's only a drop in the bucket.
One-fifth of a century.
Changing.
Oh,
I just say like I think that's not long enough.
Well, there's an argument there. Before I explain it, just wanted to say quickly, thank you, Sean, for super chatting $5 Canadian fun bucks, and putting the smiley face emoticon. I appreciate you for that. Thanks so much. Again, it's just the channel, guys. But I guess the issue, and we're moving away from like the heart of the matter. So I do want to work our way back. But I've heard the argument that Gibbs is trying to make, and it's simply that if you're going to actually nation build, right, like that takes a culture shift. We managed to do that in Japan, right? We managed to like shift the culture in some startling ways there. But for like Afghanistan, it would simply take longer. It would like take generations. And so if you were serious about
Japan wasn't a fucking inbred group of people with barbaric religion.
Japan was a different place.
And y'all thought I had the
Japan was indeed a different
well,
place.
wait, they did have a barbaric religion, and the United States was far more.
Yeah, we cut them off the fucking knees from their religion, and they were cool with it.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. Like the biggest mistake.
Said I'm not God.
Well, exactly right. The biggest mistake that we made in Afghanistan, from my armchair internet panel opinion, is going to be the same mistake that we made with Iraq, which is that we gave them democracy too early, right? We moved in and we broke down what was left and left a power vacuum and stuck around, but kind of, right? Like 1 foot in the water kind of situation. Afghanistan should have been ruled directly by a U.S. general, right? A U.S. military administration for 5 years. Thinking. Well, no, you implement the economic policy of Afghanistan, just like we did in Japan. We implemented the educational policy in Afghanistan, just like we did in Japan. We changed Japan's language in certain ways following the capitulation, right? We controlled the educational system of Japan, and we outlawed them teaching certain things to their kids, and we changed their kanji to be kind of how we wanted it to suit U.S. interests. That contributed to Japan being now in our sphere. We probably should have done the same thing when it came to Afghanistan.
This is the problem is that there are a billion different there's an infinitesimal amount of variables when you're dealing with culture, society, government. Every human being is a complicated factor that's difficult to study because from a scientific perspective, it's not science that we're dealing with. We're not in the realm of science when we're saying what ought we do and how ought we exert power in these places. Instead, what we're doing is we're looking at patterns and hoping that those patterns repeat themselves in wildly dissimilar situations. And what we're betting on it is we're betting the American tax dollars and the American lives that we lose and the money and lives that are lost in the places that we invade or that we engage in regime change wars in. And I don't know, it all just kind of sounds so naive and silly to be like, oh, we're gonna go in this country and we're gonna have a plan, and it's like, and we're gonna support a regime, you know, of you know, moderate rebels, and this moderate rebel group is gonna come in and, you know, overtake this area, and then we're gonna send in the Green Berets to train this moderate rebel group, and it'll turn out great. It's just like, it's a story we've been told a whole bunch of times with a fuck ton of failures and a few presumed successes, and we use those presumed successes to be like, well, here's what worked here, as this means of like how we're gonna like successfully do this. Meanwhile, fucking groceries are like insanely expensive. Like the middle class is being wilted away. Like our economy is facing all of these issues. Like our infrastructure is crumbling. Like you have 7.2 million immigrants in one presidency coming across the southern border that are all getting fucking welfare. And in New York, they're getting half. And it's like we have all these fucking problems, and like we're gonna like pontificate about how we might engage in regime change wars in fucking Iran. Like it's wild.
First
to
of all,
even have
war
that
is good for the
conversation.
economy.
True.
War is good for the
Thank you,
economy.
Scott.
War is good for the economy.
No,
First of all,
please shut up.
absolutely. No, it absolutely is. We literally, one of our biggest exports is the military-industrial complex. I don't know how you can say it's not good for the economy. Like that's unequivocally, like literally, part of the reason
Yeah,
we
what
got
we
out
need
of the
now
Great
is more
Depression
war
is
spending.
World
Yeah,
War
that's
II.
that's what we need.
I mean, I absolutely think so. We can ramp up the factories. I mean, it's clear by the amount of artillery shells that are being used by Russia and Ukraine that we don't have enough artillery shell capabilities. That's millions of jobs right there. Boom, jobs, thousands right there.
American weapons manufacturers
Millions of
and
jobs.
rich people that are able to that have the right friends and invest in the right places make money. But
Well,
when
good.
we look
Then
at the
maybe
current
we
situation,
know that you should invest in
when we
those
look
stocks.
at
Then, like, I don't know,
when
see
we
that's so complicated.
when we look at even our current situation in the current wars that are already happening right now, what we are seeing is wheat. We're seeing food prices. Now, some of that is COVID, some of that is fiat currency, some of that is that Ukraine isn't able to produce grain, and some of that is fucking Dutch farmers getting fucked with like nitrogen regulations by the EU. There are a lot of things that make the grain and farming things go up. Part of that's war. So what happens when we invest in a massive war with Israel? Oh, I don't know. Where are chip foundries for literally all of our electronics? They're in 3 fucking places in the world. They're in Taiwan, they're in Israel, and they're in Germany. Germany doesn't have a lot of fucking factories. Okay, so if Israel gets involved in a massive war, and we're bogged down in a massive fucking war in the Middle East, and China decides, I don't know, Xi Jinping decides, you know what? I'm supposed to have been elected out of office already anyways, like 2 years ago. You know what? Now seems like a good time to take on Taiwan because the American military is busy fighting a giant war in Iran. Well, guess what? There are no chip foundries for literally every electronic device in the entire fucking world, except for a tiny, tiny percentage that go through Germany. Like there are so many problems that can occur from war, and
Well, I mean, you're making my argument right there. You're making my
automatically
argument right
beneficial
there.
is fucking
So
stupid.
hold on. You literally just made my argument for me right there. You said Taiwan and Israel, both 2 major chip producers. Guess what? That means we're pretty inherently tied to go in there and take these people out before they come to a threat to those countries, right? So in Taiwan's case, it's going to be a little harder to go in there and take out China. However, Iran looks like you're a bitch on the block. I'm just saying, we can go in there. We can take them out tomorrow. Guess whose little chip factories are secured? Israel. So you're just giving me one more reason why we should go in there and have regime change in Iran. Like you literally just like made my point for me.
I want to spend all day on
fathoming how retarded
on
this is.
on this part.
I mean, it's pretty simple.
I'm sure you have thoughts, right? Very big thoughts. Something Shakespeare
Team
said something
Tuck
about
Titties,
something.
I'm sure.
So
there were a couple of other moments when Shakespeare came up in my head, but not at the moment. This one, although
Brian,
I mean, my thoughts were really more about if you go back, so like Gibbs was talking about all these like historical players like in the past, and the problem is if you want to go back and you look, like the areas that we're talking about that are fundamentally culturally different are the same places where ancient Rome had problems with Afghanistan. Alexander the Great had problems with Afghanistan. The Great Russian Empire had problems with Afghanistan. Like when you get to a culture that's sufficiently like distinct and culturally unlike the power that's trying to colonize it, that success rate like fundamentally shifts. And I think that that's what we're not looking at here, is that there's a reason why, like militarily, things that worked in Europe and even that worked in East Asia didn't work during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, because it's not just the culture, it's also the climate. There's a lot of other differences as well. But I think what we're finding is that what we have found for a long time now is that there are limits to empire, and you have to pick and choose. You can't just take on the whole world, because that's not going to end well in the long term. It's not sustainable.
Thank you. So does anyone else want to? We have a limited amount of time left, so where else, guys?
I wanted to ask you real quick, Prime. Do you if you could remove the regime in Iran and replace it with like a more U.S. friendly regime with minimal casualties, like pretty minimal, right? And it was pretty good shot. Like there was a window of opportunity in which like we could do it. Would you be in favor of doing it?
Only if the resulting government would be a marked improvement for the people. If not, like if I'm just
which it probably would be.
Not necessarily.
They would need to have the support of the people. I think that's the more critical differentiation.
Yeah,
I mean,
right? Because if it doesn't have the support of the people, then it's going to wind up like the Shah.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. I didn't think of it in that way, but that's a very good way of conceptualizing that.
So, right, according to this one website that I just found, like 80% roughly of the people there would prefer a different kind of government, right? But they can't because it's a totalitarian kind of system.
And every time they protest, they get crushed.
And every time they protest, they get crushed, right? But let's say there's a massive protest, right? The reigning government does something, and then like there's an opportunity for the U.S. to like do some targeted strikes and basically arm the people there, and then there's going to be like a pretty significant regime change. Would you be in favor of doing that?
I'd be in favor if the change would be better. If it's going to be worse, then no. Like better the devil they know than the devil they don't. But it's like
Yeah, you'd really have to like be clear about what they mean when they say a different type of government, because it could be that they want
more
even
democratic.
more religiously, okay, but in what way though? Because it could be that they want an even more religiously like extreme government, right? There's not enough Sharia for them, right? So like, I think you need to be like very clear about like what you mean by a different style of government or a different or change, and then like Prem said, or I'm sorry, Aiko said, I think that imposing some America-friendly dude. When the population has a long history of being fed either propaganda or true stories, good reasons to hate America, it's probably going to lead to a sizable portion of the population rising up and lead to some kind of civil war or some kind of like fucking ISIS situation, right?
So
most radicalizing a lot of people.
Most of the people in Iran that would like to remove the Islamic Republic, they, according to this survey, let's just take it as true, prefer a presidential republic, and then there's another section that prefers like a parliamentary republic. Let's say that like those two factions were like teaming up to like come up with some kind of compromise, some kind of democratic presidential kind of parliamentary system to remove the theocracy from power, the mullahs. Seems like a pretty good thing, I would say.
Yeah, so in that case, I'm not like diametrically opposed to regime change. Right, like, and regime change can come in all kinds of forms. It can be like organic, meaning purely from the people, but like oftentimes that's not the case. There's other actors involved in a globally connected world that are influencing them. Right, like some major influences. Sometimes it's just minor influences. So I'm not necessarily like if the U.S. were to help along something that like tip the balance on something like that, like yeah, I'd be fine with it, especially if what happens next has the support of people, reflects the will of the people, and results in a greater happiness of the people. Then I can't argue against that.
But of course, the trouble is like Iran like has a technocracy up the top on top, and like there's layers and layers of people who are all sort of jockeying against each other for power right up at the top. But there's precious few to no moderates in that group of people. So even though there is a lot of like energy among the people, like for more liberalized government, among the people who are like entrenched in power on all sides. And I'm talking about the Council of Experts as being the group of people who like decide who the next Ayatollah is going to be. The guy who's in there is ancient, so that power is going to be exercised soon. The makeup of the Council of Experts at the time at which that happens is going to be our next like critical opportunity to see if somebody comes in there. And every analyst I've read seems to have take very little stock in that. They really feel as if the odds of that next leader, like there's a sliver of a window opening there, but if it's not the right person that gets picked, it's another generation before we have another opportunity. But that's not like a popular uprising revolution. That's just like it would almost have the effect of a coup if you could get somebody like new in there. People thought Rouhani was going to be that guy, but I don't have great hopes for it though, because I think those people have been torn out of power.
Well, we actively undermine the moderates there, right? The moderates pushed the Iran nuclear deal. They said this is what we got to normalize. Like this is the start of us normalizing relations with the West. And the Ayatollah was like, "Don't trust the United States. The United States will absolutely betray you." But they got through, and then we betrayed them. Like in years, in record time, we did exactly that. And so yeah, we don't have very many options there. But I think, Electra, do you agree with me that if we put incentives and disincentives in front of them, that we could shape that relationship for the better over the long term, very long term? That is something we can move towards if we had the will to do that, and we don't have the political will to do it. What if we did?
I'm super skeptical, just because again, you have to just look at countries acting within their geopolitical interests, and when you have Saudi Arabia there, who's a geopolitical nemesis in border countries, right, to Iran, when we have support for Israel, which is just not going to go away, it seems to me that when we give Iran rope, they just use it to further their own goals, because of course they do. But it's not even talking about like the funding of weapons to Russia. So I'm just skeptical that give like what kind of rope are you thinking? Like what kind of goodwill are you thinking about showing Iran?
Internal critique again, stepping out of my anarchist lens, because I think you're all fucking put any god into these wars. I think it's all stupid. Setting aside what should be obvious that maybe we should fix our own fucking country because we have enough problems right now, instead of worrying about this. The other thing that I think we need to recognize is that Iran is not just a country with that like funds terrorism, right? Iran is the only fucking predominant Shia country, right? There's the 12 are Shiism, but like regardless, like they represent the interests of minority groups throughout the entire Arab world from a religious perspective. Okay. And so the concept that we're going to get yeah, sure, it would be a great victory to have a more Western friendly Iran, but like you're trying to undo things that are not just about politics. They're not just about what resources they have, but also recognize that like the legitimacy of the state of Iran is based upon how they protect Shia Muslims throughout the world. And by protect, they mean kill fucking Sunnis and kill the Americans and kill the Jews, especially the fucking Jews that are the big problem, right? From their perspective. And so like, this is why this attack had to occur, because they cannot sustain their government after Israel bombs a building and kills some of their generals. They have to respond. And then when they respond with something that they know is probably not going to be that effective. And then they're like, America, you don't have to get involved. And they even said like, we're done. We consider the matter closed, right? So this is them trying to save face with their own people. And so like the trying to meddle with regime change and the idea that you might not just get a worse devil, when you're dealing with someone where the entire country is a dominant of a specific religious type that is already connected with terrorism throughout the world, and their popularity, yes, there are peaceful Iranians. Yes, there are liberal Iranians that want that. But there's also a ton of fucking Iranians in their population that demand that the state of Iran use their power, their influence, their money, their proxies to continuously weaken Israel, weaken the US, weaken Sunni Muslims. And like, you're just as likely, no matter what you do in that region, to have a dismal failure that gets replaced with something worse. It's what happened when we did Iraq, right? We have something worse. Saddam Hussein was terrible. I get that. But you know what? The region's a lot worse off without Saddam Hussein in it.
Because we gave it to Iran.
Be a fucking power imbalance. Right. He used to be able to fucking, there used to be a buffer zone with Iraq there that doesn't exist anymore.
I mean,
this
I don't
was,
know
again, the ham-fisted attempt at democracy first, right? We're just going to put a democracy in right away. We shouldn't have done that.
No,
like,
I don't think
Iraq should have been under U.S. military administration.
I don't think it is worse. I think it's working as intended. Like y'all sitting here going, "Oh, it's worse." All right, what's really worse? Is ISIS worse than like Saddam Hussein's Iraq? Like by like military power? No. Like you're sitting here like Syria is way worse off, and Syria used to be a semi-legitimate threat. Okay, so like, all right, just compare militarily, right? Iraq had like the 4th largest army when they invaded like Kuwait in 1991, right? And then they were somewhat weaker. I think they're like 8th or 12th or something whenever we invaded them, with Bush Jr., right? So we're going in there under W and we take them out, right? So now who's stronger militarily? ISIS, who's like a hodgepodge of a lot of unorganized groups that are basically got under one umbrella, or Saddam Hussein's?
That's a ridiculous way to think about it.
Although it's not a ridiculous way to think about it, because then I turn right around.
I mean, hold on. Did fucking Iraq set off a refugee crisis that sent millions of Arabs and North Africans into Europe? That Europe is okay. No, hold on. It's not just for them, for us too, right?
No, I mean,
like a wave of terrorism that is still happening today, by the way.
Yeah, right. I feel like Swedes who have like no-go Muslim zones towns.
Yeah,
hold on. Let me just finish this argument. All right, so like, I get your argument that terrorism bad, right? I get terror. So Syria,
not just terrorism bad.
Hold on, Syria is also an adversarial power. Syria is no longer a serious entity on like any political stage. Does anybody take President Assad and Damascus like serious anymore if they made a threat tomorrow? No one.
Yes.
No one.
Yes. Well, no, Gibbs. I hate. I'm with you sometimes, but this is something that like you're wrong on because Iraq has shifted into being a junior partner of Iran.
Okay, I agree with that
because of the removal. Like in terms of long-term geopolitical interests, it was a complete blunder. Right now, Iraq is under the wing of Iran, and Syria is now basically a client state of Russia, right? Which now has new hardware and air bases in Syria because of its destabilization of Syria that happened because of ISIS, because of the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. It was a horrible.
I mean, I disagree with that take vehemently.
But don't worry, Lactoid. All we have to do is funnel fucking weapons through Turkey, and we don't really care where those weapons end up. And then al-Nusra will be able to take care of Syria one day. Don't you worry. Al-Nusra is going to do something. Didn't you see that cushy little interview he did on NPR? Isn't regime change war so fucking effective?
That's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it should be a U.S. It should be a U.S. military administration. Okay, that's the
no.
Don't give them control.
We don't give a fuck about these people administration.
So that would be the way to
fix our southern border, fix our fucking country,
and then we never give it back. That's what we should.
Well, hold on a minute. Let's not go there. I'm saying that like we so like for example with Iraq and with Afghanistan and with every country in which we did this was actually successful, which is that it should be the U.S. military. If we're going to expend the effort to actually go into a country, you don't just give it back right away, right? You got to hold it and fundamentally change the systems in place so that you don't have that country fall into another country's power polarity immediately when you leave. It was a complete blunder. Bush fucked up, absolutely fucked up Iraq. It was one of the worst things that America did in terms of the Middle East. And it didn't have to be done that way.
America hasn't had a successful operation that hasn't bit us in the ass in the Middle East, with the exception of Operation Provide Comfort, ever. Nothing we've done in the Middle East has fucking, in the long term, benefited American interests, with the exception of maintaining the petrodollar, which, by the way, is just a ticking fucking time bomb on our own currency inflation rate if it ever fucking comes back to us. We've just survived limping along as we've wasted trillions of dollars that we could have used or just simply kept in the United States and been a fucking paragon of technological capacity and trade. But instead, we have just been in a quagmire of bullshit since Eisenhower in the Middle East, and we're still talking about what we ought do with other Arab nations. Like, what the fuck? This is so crazy that you guys lived through 9/11 and you can't see how fucked this entire region is and how we just keep throwing money down a bottomless pit. Like, what the fuck? Stop. Just stop. Like, you don't have to keep doing the drugs. Eventually you have to quit your fucking addiction and focus on America. This is so dumb that we're even fucking rationally considering wasting trillions more on more fucking wars that don't help.
Okay, well then,
oil.
Well then, do you agree? Maybe you simply don't. I don't know. It's not clear to me how isolationist you are. But maybe you're maximalist on this position. But like, if that while we shouldn't be doing regime changes, right? That war is probably not the answer here. Okay, but would you say that you'd cut off all diplomatic relationships, or would you try to work on those diplomatic relationships, increase our ability to work with these individuals, but not be pouring a ton of money in there one way or the other?
First, given the absolute authority to make any decisions, I would abolish the fucking nation state. Setting that aside, yeah, sure, I would maintain fucking diplomatic relations because it's stupid not to talk to people in these regards. What I would also do is I would empower American mercenary companies to be able to go and fight wars completely unregulated from us in any capacity whatsoever to the highest bidder, so long as we determine in our current legal system, as so far as it stands, that they are working as a hired agent to defend a nation against an aggressor. So, for example, if Ukraine, I wouldn't send $1 to Ukraine, but if Halliburton wants to go fight for Ukraine against Russia, I would say, be our fucking guest. Like fucking like be our
What if they want to fight for Russia?
Guest.
PMCs.
Well, they're the obvious aggressor in the situation.
I can argue with you on this. I don't know if they're the obvious aggressor. There's arguments on both sides.
Look, there are gray sides in many places.
I like
to say that you can make the argument that Russia was provoked, but you cannot make the fucking argument that Russia wasn't an aggressor when they were in several situations.
I think you can make the argument that Russia was justified in its intervention because of what was happening in the Donbass since 2014. You can make that argument. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with it, but it is kind of interesting how we
and stabilize the region. Sure, that's not what they fucking
did. But they did the exact same thing we did when it came to like our war regarding Kosovo, right? Our strategy was like you target the infrastructure, you target the capital to knock them out of the war, and then like you maintain the integrity of the Donbass, right? That was the strategy. Obviously, that's not where we're at now. But arguably, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but they have an argument there, right? The only time that we really started caring about the piles of dead bodies in Ukraine, it's been going on since 2014 when you had the Ukrainian military shelling civilians in Donetsk and Luhansk, right? Piles and piles of innocent people getting blown up by the Ukrainian military. We don't give a fuck. And then in 2022, Russia invades, and now we care. Now we care about the videos and the pictures of the civilians, right? I don't know. It's kind of a tough argument.
I think a nuclear power invading another country like we built up an entire defensive alliance against is probably more newsworthy, caring worthy, if you will, by us in the West than Ukraine bombing its own people. Like that's obviously there's obviously two different things as far as geopolitics are concerned.
I'd love to have a conversation. I don't think you're building silly Lactoid. I'd like to have a conversation with you. And talk exactly about that. That sounds interesting.
I know a lot about this, and I've been meaning to have a conversation on it for a while.
I would actually like to be educated on this. So
you studied up, and then fucking Israel Palestine happened, and now he can't talk about his.
Now I can't even talk about this. Fuck, right? God damn it!
Nobody cares.
Let's wrap this up because we've already gone past our time here, and you guys can put in all your final words in your outro statements here. But to the audience, I hope you enjoyed this so far. Miss Millie, thank you for using your Prime Gaming sub. Shout out to Miss Millie, good friend to our friend FQ. Really kind individual. So thank you for the 3 months of that. And anyone else, sub to the channel. If you got a Amazon Prime, Prime Gaming, consider helping us out. We gave you a whole bunch of entertainment here. You laughed, you cried, you got mostly frustrated with us. That's fine. But if you find yourself coming back here on a regular basis, consider helping us out. Subs to channel, give bits, give subs. Super chats have been great on YouTube. Let's continue that.
You laughed, you cried, you can kiss $5 goodbye.
You can kiss $5
Honestly.
goodbye.
That's Shakespeare.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, all right, but yeah, consider helping us out. All right, so I'm going to give an outro to all these fine individuals, starting with my friend Lactoid. Lactoid, please.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate all of you. Love the discussion. You can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, our friend Scott, as always, a lightning rod, but like, and again, I want to say this. I want to say this again. I've said this before, right? If you don't like Scott, if you don't like him, like, quote unquote, taking over the conversation, it's simply a matter of like not responding to Scott. All right. The reason he takes over the conversation is because he says something interesting, and everyone wants to say "fuck you," right? So just putting that out there. But thank you, Scott. I appreciate you.
You know, I appreciate you. You know, I think you know, I do love this panel. I like this panel because you're one of the few people in the political space that today, I'm be real with you. Today, not so much, right? But like usually, you have really good topics that aren't the thing everybody's talking about. You do a lot of research of that, and I appreciate your moderating style for the most part. You know, I do. You know, I think it's a good place, and I think it's important that we have important conversations as opposed to, you know, I just don't understand the political space when everyone is talking about the same fucking thing, how people are even entertained by that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like people that watch this channel that says the same thing over and over again. So I appreciate this place. So check out Prime, guys. You know, definitely check them out. And I'm Fabian Liberty. You can find me everywhere. I kind of just came back and I'm doing a bunch of stuff. So, and if you want to learn about anarcho-capitalism and libertarianism and philosophy, political philosophy, I got you.
Thank you for the very kind words, friend. Let's go to our other friend, Corey. Thanks for stopping by as well.
Yeah, always grateful, and I echo pretty much all the same sentiments that Scott just went through. And to that point, okay, pretty much I think it's almost exactly 2 years to the day that I started coming on these panels. It's pretty much, I think it was pretty much early April when I got my first invitation to a Prime panel. And it's been an absolute joy ever since, obviously, and that's why I'm so grateful and always love coming here. Yeah, this is actually, I do actually look forward to being here every Monday with these great group of people. And also just to wrap up, to bolster your point, the point that Fairy Queen and Gibbs, pretty much two sides of the same coin. You know, Fairy Queen's got away with words of like poetry. So does Gibbs, but a different type of poetry. And like Gibbs, you know, is clearly petting his cat throughout the panel, and you're doing the same thing right now. So, you know, you're just mirroring Gibbs over and over. But yeah, this is always great. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv, CoreyCampbell84, and on Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube. It's Corey Campbell, and Gibbs, iCow, Dewey, Fairy Queen, Sociologic, Scott, and Lactoid. Always a pleasure, and love you, Brian.
Love you too, friend. But
he only had a long outro because I was nice, and his Canadian ass had to out nice me. Like he could not let me be.
I'll fix it.
Hold on, pause.
I'll fix it.
Let me be nicer.
I'll bolster your point. Where Scott is right about performative contradictions. Where if ever and about values, if Scott ever says that he values brevity and conciseness, that's the performative contradiction.
True. I value it just in others. My narcissism won't allow me to value it in myself.
That's really good. So friend, it's really nice. 2-year anniversary. That's like, it makes me happy that you've been here for so long. However, while I accept that it's been a joy, I don't accept that it's been an absolute joy. You've been here consistently almost as much as Lactoid. I think Lactoid in the last 2 years has been the most consistent. But so that means you sat through a lot of bullshit. So I kind of refuse, like, it's an absolute joy.
I'm gonna get the
Don't
Carfax.
invalidate my experience, Brian.
Okay, all right, no problem. Thank you, friend, and I hope we get to spend many more times together. Yeah. Let's go to our friend Ali, one of our newer friends. Thank you for stopping by here as well, friend.
Yeah, I'll be devastated the days that I don't get the text to come on the panel. I'm learning to be addicted to the panels. It seems like this is a great time. I love arguing with you guys. I didn't have much today on the Iran thing, but normally. But no, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and you had thoughts on the art thing. So we really appreciate that. Like those open-ended, like free discussions. Like I said, like you kind of, it's like the hive mind here, kind of converging on something that you all like really want to talk about, and I love when you guys do that. And what comes out is always super interesting, right? Like I'm learning stuff from you all, so thank you. Next, FQ, another new friend. Like you were fantastic. And everyone, hey, do you all agree? I'm gonna ask everyone this, all right? You all agree that FQ is one of our best guests that we've ever had here, especially to the veterans. No. Let's do this. Let's not
do this. Let's not do this. Let's move on. Listen, no. Listen, stop. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, first of all, thank you. Fuck you, Scott. Okay, don't be an asshole as we're about to leave the panel. Jesus Christ. Thank you all. Okay.
I'm not being an asshole. I'm saying yes, I would agree that you're one of the better panelists. I had to think through it.
You a-hole, Scott. Take it back right now.
Now you're being the asshole, Scott.
Thank you. Okay. Anyway, thank you all. It's always a huge pleasure. It's just as Corey has said, as Ali has said, as everybody. Like I think we all share the same sentiment, which is that I also feel really, really grateful, Prime, whenever you send me an invite. I'm always excited to come on. You do an enormous amount of research, and one of the best parts about what you do for these panels that I've always loved is that you find an article, you come up with like an original idea to talk about, but it's not even just that, it's the questions that you ask within the prompt. You write very detailed and specific prompts that I think do a really good job of bringing out some of these deeper and more interesting pathways of conversation. And I don't think our conversation would be possible were you not here to act as the interlocutor to at least my circuitous like way of like expressing things. So thank you very much for your graciousness. Thank you for inviting us on. Thank you all, of course, for tolerating me to this evening. And you can find me at Fairy Queen's Cottage. It's right here on YouTube. And you can find me at Fairy_Queen on Twitter. Thank you all so much. And I mean that. Thank you very much.
Hey, yeah. We can see the blush in your very pale skin. But we appreciate.
Stop it.
We appreciate you, friend. You're fantastic. All right. Next, Doobie, been here for the longest. Doobie, thank you for coming through. This was great. I want to hear more of your thoughts on the Israel-Iran debate, because I know you have really detailed musings on these things. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's all you'll ever get. All right, Heiko, thank you for stopping by. Not enough Shakespeare today, but we'll accept that.
Yeah. Hey, I give you Alexander the Great. What do you want?
All right, yeah.
Can't have her. Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing too, like on your moderation style. Whenever you sense a lull, you will ask another question, like to keep things going. And the questions that you ask in those moments are the best part of your moderation style for me. I always enjoy them because you always think of a way to like move the debate in a direction that like gets people to think more. I like that.
Oh, thank you. That's really, really kind. Oh man, a lot of kind words from everyone today. That's really nice.
Fuck, dude, I won't be nice. Sorry.
No, I appreciate it.
Everyone be like, this asshole can't be the only one nice tonight.
I really...
Okay, let's praise Fairy Queen some more. Let's see.
No, it's not. No. On to Gibbs.
But yeah, I try my best there. But like that only happens like it's good questions only work if I have good participants. I've had not great participants seriously in the past,
And doesn't matter what you say, the conversation won't move. It won't like bite or anything. So it's all because I have like really fantastic people who continuously share their time with us every week. So shout out to my veterans and to the new individuals who've been spending time with us. Thanks so much. Admiral Gibbs, thank you. Like for never backing down, for enlightening us with your views, and they are always something special. And something I think fun to examine. So thanks, friend.
Yeah, I enjoy doing these a lot. They're real fun. I know that people here on Twitch will like to meme and be like, "Yours is just crazy," but I feel like last week we had an example on a different panel where I was the lighter version of some of my views, and I'm like, "See, I've been telling y'all, people believe what I've been saying, and nobody believed me." And so it's very satisfying to come be the I don't know, I guess harbinger of doom that there are people that think like me out here, and it's spread the love. And yeah, these panels are always real fun. Thanks for having me. I am a little sad about one thing that happened tonight, and that was the we didn't get to explore something brought up right at the end, and that was the idea that we should be sitting in private militaries places and letting them just go fight wars for us. Big fan of that idea. I hope we come back to that in the future.
You guys want to talk about
myself.
PMCs? Like, shooting?
Oh,
We can make that a topic, right? Like,
I think Scott and Gibbs are both going to love them for very different reasons.
Yeah, big fan of
Okay.
that idea.
All right, no, let's lock it in. All right, I'm writing it down now. Reverie topic. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we empower PMCs? I guess I don't know, something like that. I'll clean up.
Oh yes.
All right, yeah, let's do that next
Yeah,
week.
that's gonna be a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Collaborative. Love to see it. All right. Thanks all for this. I'll send you guys. Oh, god damn it. Majin BMAC, thank you for gifting 5 subs. I missed that. I hope you're still around. I missed. And if you're not, then I'll just like send you a message. But Majin BMAC, thank you for gifting 5 subs to the community, supporting the channel. That's the kind of support that we do need to continue around to provide you this content. We've been doing it almost for 4 years. We're very close to our anniversary. But you are around. Great. Yeah, we've been doing this for almost 4 years, and we can't do it for another more year without all the kind people who support. So thanks so much. Okay. I'm going to send you guys off. Who's streaming? Who's streaming? Who wants it? Who wants it?
Factoid streaming.
I don't want it.
I'm streaming, but I think Gibbs is the only one that actually like stays for I think a considerable period of time
Yeah.
online afterwards.
I'll probably be
Gibbs
doing
in the middle of a
something
1,000-hour marathon stream. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
not
Yeah, like-
Yeah.
I'm going pretty late.
Gibbs, how do you survive that shit? Like that's like I see you and I genuinely like start to get worried. Like
So like
72 hours? Are you kidding me?
I mean, we made it like 60. Honestly, that did make one mistake. I should have delayed it like 2 or 3 days because I like just got over a sinus thing, and that cost me my voice there at the end. But I like slept a whole shitload, and beforehand,
stream.
I get to sleep, it was good. It was really good. I gotta say, I was very.
That's why.
I mean, so it like I gotta say, it was way more productive and way more successful than I thought it'd be. Everybody was very supportive, big fan.